They brought us to this country as a labor force. We built a foundation and they hate us for it. They hate us for it. We built a foundation and they ain't pay us for it. They ain't pay us for it, but they gon' pay for it. Already prayed for it. Non-believers didn't pray for us. Non-believers didn't pray for us. We're black and we built a foundation. Stone by stone, generation to generation. Vultures said we had no culture. Them vultures got a Jay-Z pop. Them vultures got a lazy culture. Vultures eat what they didn't kill. Vultures sleep what they didn't build. Brought us to this country as a labor force. We built a foundation and they hate us for it. We built a foundation and they ain't pay us for it. They ain't pay for it, but they gon' pay for it. Already paid for it. Nobody paid for it. Nobody wasn't paid for us. Nobody wasn't paid for us. We're black and we built a foundation. Stone by stone, generation to generation. Vultures said we had no culture. And vultures got a Jay-Z poster. Them vultures got a lazy poster.
What? What you want to say?
You don't know how this fucking country works.
Yeah, I do know how this fucking... Back up. In my face. You bugging out.
So you're going to overload these.
Back up. Are you bugging?
And down goes Frazier. Peace to the family, Grand Rising. Yeah, so we don't condone violence. We don't go out looking for violence. I'm saying Black Americans, foundational Black Americans. We don't go starting trouble. We don't go with the intent of exercising violence. But we do want to practice self-defense, okay? Especially when we're being aggressed for simply just being Black American. That's really a hate crime that the white teen man did, right? Okay, and so Umar speaks on reparations. Let's talk about that. And then Umar has a special announcement that I will play throughout the live. First of all, this is Umar takes on reparation.
If that's the case, where is your campaign against the Latinos? Because I don't see it. Where's your campaign against the Caucasian immigrants? I don't see it. Where's your campaign against the South Asian and North Asian immigrants? I don't see.
But see, so let's, what I think fragmented everything is the reparation talk. And so I think the reparation talk, a lot of the foundational, and I'm, I could be speaking
Before we get to reparations, let's make one thing clear.
out
campaign
that place.
if that's the case. Where is your campaign against the Latinos? Because I don't see it.
Yeah, you'll never see it. We don't have a campaign against an entire ethnic group. We don't have a campaign against Latinos, period. Globally, nationally, that's not our position. We're not xenophobic. We don't suffer from xenophobia. We have no campaign against the Latino community. Our campaign is against people who, whether Latino individuals, not even people, our thing is against people who are anti-Black American, who set up policies, support policies that are to destabilize Black Americans' efforts, right, to progress in this country. Speaking against reparations, diluting our causes, things like that, sabotaging, undermining us. We have a problem with people like that, and we don't believe the entire Latino population does that. The community, we believe individuals from all communities have been caught undermining us and sabotaging us. So Dr. Umar is framing a position, giving us a position that we don't hold. We don't have an issue with no ethnic community. We only have an issue with individuals who directly misrepresent us, defame us, sabotage anything we have going on in our favor, and undermine us. That's it. So his choice of words are not ours. It's not what we represent. And this is called framing at its best.
Where's your campaign against the Caucasian immigrants? I don't see it.
We don't have a campaign against any immigrants, not even Africans or Caribbean immigrants. He's making this stuff up, trying to paint us as a xenophobic, divisive people.
Where's your campaign against the South Asian and North Asian immigrants? I don't see
But
it.
see,
And you will never see it because we're not xenophobic. We're not divisive. We're not a hate group. We're not a cult. Now, we were divisive if we were xenophobic. If we were a cult or a hate group, you will see it. The fact that you don't see it proves that we're not what people try to say we are in an effort to discredit us. Okay, and our voice is. You're right. You don't see it. So thank you. So we're not xenophobic against these different ethnicities and races. Thank you. Okay, so now he's going to speak on reparations.
So what I think fragmented everything is the reparation talk. And so I think the reparation talk, a lot of the foundational, and I'm, I could be school, but I think that they believe that the reparations belong.
Come from ADOS. This was around before they were born. You feel me? Pan-Africanists gave birth to
No, we don't feel you, because he's comparing a group, a movement of individuals with a foreign thought. He's comparing them to a lineage. So those people with that foreign thought, they themselves were foundational Black Americans, some of them. So there's no this or that. Both can be true, meaning that they are foundational Black Americans with that Pan-African thought that want to be inclusive and anti-American, unpatriotic. Yeah. So those people, some of those people, did identify as foundational Black Americans. So once again, trying to frame us as a group, an organization, a cult, that's not going to work. And that's the point of these lies. These lies are to set the record straight. Okay. So no, we're not a group. We are a lineage, and within this lineage, people have the right to believe what they want, even if the belief is counterproductive towards our best interest. And we believe Dr. Umar is representing, he's the leader of those people with those counterpoints, counterproductive points. All right. So now he said this. Let's go back.
Reparations invented the
Of slaves.
Well, I'm going to say this as a Pan-Africanist, because we invented the reparations fight. It don't come from FBA. It don't come from ADOS. This was around before they were born. You feel?
Okay, so now he's speaking of this right here, as I explained before. He's speaking about a Pan-Africanist group that was mixed with FBAs and all type of non-FBAs from either that have African descent. Okay, so he's speaking about the Republic of New Africa, RNA, founded in 1968. Okay, these were a bunch of black nationalists. Okay, they were a black nationalist organization that sought to create an independent nation state in the southeastern United States. Now, this was just for this cult group. This was not for all FBAs, okay, not all black Americans. This was for this cult group that called themselves the Republic of New Africa. Okay, so this is the people that he's saying had a reparations case before us. Okay, so this was based on a 1968 Detroit conference. It aimed for sovereignty. We don't aim for sovereignty. We are Americans. This is our country. So these group of people wanted to be a separate nation. They wanted sovereignty over Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and South Carolina. So they were pretty much picking up where the Confederates failed at and got deleted. So they wanted to pick up the states the Confederates were representing and secede from the United States, secede from the Union, secede from America. So we know that wasn't going to be successful. The group proposed reparations, supported land-based sociologist cooperative economics, and aimed to empower descendants of enslaved people. Now, we're going to work out the details of their reparations, right? What they were asking for as far as dollar amount, and was it race-based? Was it lineage-based? Okay. We're going to work out those details, but let Umar finish his rant.
Pan-Africanists gave
A school, but my limited understanding of it is I think that they believe that the reparations belong to descendants of slaves.
Well, I'm going to say this as a Pan-Africanist, because we invented the reparations fight. It don't come from FBA. It don't come from ADOS. This was around before they were born. You feel me? Yes. Pan-Africanists gave birth to it. Reparations for me is not about different groups and sects of the race fighting for their crumb off the big pie. This should be one fight, one reparation. Do you feel me, Loon? We can split it up how we want to split it up after we get it. But by you fighting divided for the same restitution, you playing right into the hands of your enemy. There was one slavery, took some of us to the Caribbean. There was one slavery, took some of us to the Americas. There was one slavery, took some of us to Central and South America, right? But there was one African slavery. So the Africans of the world, from the continent to the British, Canada had slavery, Australia had it, right? We should all come and sit down. Let's fight this together.
See, I think they reject
You
that.
would get it quicker.
Yeah.
You would get more, because guess what? It's a united front. But because we hate each other more than we hate racism.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Because we hate each other more than we hate racism, I don't want to unite with no black Africans. I don't want to unite with no Caribbeans. And you got Africans saying the same thing. I don't want to unite with no descendants of no slaves, right? I want to fight my own thing. So ECOWAS got their own fight. Black British got their own fight. Canada got their own fight. Black America got their own fight. And it's sectionalized, sectarian.
That's what I'm saying.
Nobody communicating with each other. So the white man going to play his old game of what? Divide and conquer, separate and rule.
That's why I wanted to have a conversation about the FBA and the Pan-Africanism, because that's what's going on. Although I hear when you speak, although you're a Pan-Africanist, I hear some of the stuff I hear from foundational Black Americans.
Well,
Yeah, you get it from us. Just like the need to delineate and self-identify. FBA ADOS, and now he comes with D.A.F.A. Okay, so let's read. Okay, so let's read this group that supposedly came with the first reparation cases. So just because you're the first to do something or you have an idea doesn't mean that that was the best way to exercise and express and demonstrate that idea. All right. So even though his claim is false, because how you the first to do something as though you're not us? That means, but that wasn't the first anyway. The first goes back to the 1800s. We'll tackle that in a second. And they didn't claim Pan-Africanism. Now, this group he's talking about first, he's calling them the first, which is ahistorical because they claimed not even not even Pan-Africanism. They were claiming Black nationalism. But so here we are. So the Republic, we're going to read along together. And then I'm going to play some clips with Tariq Nasheed. So Tariq Nasheed touched on free Blacks and did we call ourselves African? 3 different occasions. And today was the latest. So I pieced them all together. You know, I'm a thorough researcher. I'm a journalist. So I pieced them all together. I'm going to play them all without any interruption. I want to play them all authentically. All right. All right. And then I'm going to come back and respond to that. But let's first read this. Okay. So let's get the question first. This is what they won't do. The question, I said, please explain the Republic of New Africa RNA. So all I did was just move. God, this floating thing is in the damn way. Hold on, get this floating thing out the way. Okay. So all I did was pretty much copy this right here, the Republic, blah, blah, and I put it in Google AI. I said, please explain. So I don't lead the research. I don't lead AI. I ask a generic question to get an honest, straightforward answer. I said, please explain the Republic of New Africa RNA founded in 1968, reparations claim, and the dollar amount they were asking for, and what Reparations Act were they using to fight for such a claim and why it failed. So there's a reason why they came up short. He's not going to admit that. The Republic of New Africa RNA, founded in March 1968 at a convention in Detroit, represented a, hold on, let me do this. You got to see his face. So once again, the Republic of New Africa RNA, founded in March 1968 at a convention in Detroit, represented a radical shift in the fight for Black liberation, not African liberation. Unlike the mainstream civil rights movement, which sought integration, the RNA demanded sovereignty, territory, and a specific massive reparations settlement. Okay. So the reparations claim $400 billion. This is 1968, family. The RNA's reparation claim was grounded in the idea that the United States owed a debt of justice for the centuries of unpaid labor and systemic oppression of the American Negro. The amount they demanded, $400 billion in damages. The purpose this money was intended to fund the reparation of Black Americans to a independent nation state, to build the infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and industries necessary for self-sufficiency. Now, these people were the leaders of, according to these guys, these are the leaders of Black Americans, right, at this point that they're making this demand. The territory, along with cash, they claim 5 southern states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, which they call the Kush District. Oh, shit. Funny, because we talked about Sudan just yesterday. They argue these states were the ancestral homeland where Black labor and had cleared the land and built the nation's initial wealth. So that phrase cleared the land. We're going to speak about that in depth, and we'll be using that terminology to explain how we're foundational. So keep in mind, family, cleared the land. That's a phrase we'll use going forward when we speak about how we're foundational. We're foundational because we cleared the land, and that's irrefutable, indisputable. So they argue that these states were the ancestral homeland. So now we know for a fact they're not Pan-Africans. Okay, so when he say we, the Pan-Africans, he just lied. These folks were black nationalists. That's why Homeland America. So these black nationalists argued these states were the ancestral homeland where black labor had cleared the land and built the nation's initial wealth. And just for the record, I don't see the black nationalists and Pan-Africans too far apart from each other. So both of them are Daffa DUX. The legal basis, the RNA primarily used Special Field Orders number 15, often called 40 acres and a mule, as the historical and legal precedent for their claim. The unfilled promise, they argued that the federal government had already admitted it owed land to the native-born black population in 1865. Since the government reneged on that promise, the RNA argued the debt had remained open and had accrued massive interest over the century. Successor state theory. They positioned the RNA as the legal successor to the enslaved Africans, claiming they were a colonized people with a right to self-determination under international law. So let me guess, they were divisive. Now we're going to talk about that later too. We're going to talk about what does that mean, colonized, colonizers, because there's a mix-up in language where we're calling everything that's labeled a colony, we're pretending they had colonizers. I had to cook a friend on that. Okay, so why the claim failed? The RNA's push for 400 billion and Southern Territory failed due to a combination of internal pressure and intense government suppression. COINTELPRO and suppression. The FBI under J. Edgar Hoover targeted the RNA as a black nationalist hate group. Okay, constant police raids, most notably the 1971 shootout in Jackson, Mississippi, led to the imprisonment of its leaders, including Umar Abadeli. Legal anchor issues. Because the 14th Amendment had legally defined black Americans as U.S. citizens in 1868, the government argued that they could not be a separate nation within U.S. borders. This made their claim of sovereignty a legal impossibility in American courts. So all you Moors plebiscite babblers, you got to give up your American citizenship. Lack of mainstream support. While many in the community supported the ideal of reparations, the RNA's demand for total separation was viewed as too extreme by mainstream black leaders who were still focused on the legislative wins of the Civil Rights Act. So nobody was listening to this foolishness. Okay, so economic and practicality in 1968, 400 billion. Listen to this, family. 400 billion in 1968 was nearly the size of the entire U.S. GDP. The federal government viewed the demand not as a negotiation starting point, but as an existential, I got my glasses, threat to the American economy. So they wanted all the dollars of America. Okay. They want America money, all of the money, 400 billion. So they didn't think this out. They had no economists on their side. They had no Dr. Claude Anderson. They had no Dr. Sandy Darity. They had nobody. These are wild black nationalists who probably were hateful, giving everybody a bad name that comes after them. But they were not taken seriously at all, as you can see. So the RNA was a precursor to the modern FBA ADOS movements in its focus on the native-born status of the descendants of U.S. chattel slavery. So that's another good point there that AI pointed out. Dr. Umar, they didn't include Africans of Africa. They didn't include West Indians of the Caribbean. This was a domestic demand for domestic Americans, native born. So you see, like family, they're up and down. They would choose people, groups that they'll claim them, but don't acknowledge that these people were more aligned with FBA and ADOS as far as this is only for American citizens that has U.S. chattel slavery. Because remember, this goes back to Field Order number 15, the 40 acres and a mule that was promised to our ancestors, the freedmen, that Dr. Umar talks about later. But this was not all of Africa. So what, or the West Indies. So for Umar to talk about there were reparations cases before FBA ADOS, and this is one of them, and most likely who he's referencing. But they're only talking about Foundation Black Americans, but then he has a rant talking about this global reparations argument. It's just all over the place, family. This is why it's important to have them name who they're speaking of. Because I could have this in mind, then he could say, I won't talk about them. That's why Tariq Nasheed says name them. And I say name them. So we don't assume and make an ass out of ourselves when they pivot the other direction. They're going to say, because if somebody for them and then debunk it, they'll say, I never said that one. You said that one. So it's important for you and us to say, give us names so we can hold you accountable. Don't forget, family, the hashtag is accountability. Okay. So by using the 400 billion figure and the clearing the land argument, they highlighted that the wealth gap was not a coincidence, but the result of a specific unpaid debt. So that I said, so now I asked another question, but this is for you guys. Was this the same group that tried to use the Japanese Reparations Act of 1988? Yes. That was exactly the same movement, family. Listen to this foolishness. All right. Dr. Imari Abadeli, the founder and president and the leader of Black Americans, according to these fools, the president of the Republic of New Africa RNA, was the lead plaintiff in one of the most significant legal attempts to use the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 as a blueprint for Black reparations. Following the success of Japanese Americans in securing a formal apology and $20,000 for their internment during World War II, Abadeli and his legal team saw a crack in the door of the U.S. legal system. Oh, damn. The lawsuit Abadeli versus United States in 1994, Abadeli and several other new African citizens filed a lawsuit arguing that the 1988 Act had established a new legal precedent for how the government compensates for historical human rights violations. The equal protection claim, they argue that by providing redress to one group, Japanese Americans, while denying it to another group, Black Americans, descendants of slavery, not all of Africa, Umar, the U.S. government was violating the equal protection component of the Fifth Amendment. The internment argument, the RNA's legal theory was that chattel slavery and the new Jim Crow era were essentially a longer and more brutal internment than World War II camps, and therefore the debt was even more clearly established. The demand, they asked for a payout that mirrored the Japanese American settlement, but was scaled to the 400-year timeline and the population size of the foundational Black American lineage. Okay, another major case, Cato versus United States, 1995. While Abadeli was the primary leader, Ida Maikata, god damn, these foreigner names, and others filed a similar suit around the same time. This case is often cited alongside the RNA's efforts because it was used, it also used the 1988 Act to argue that the U.S. government had waived its immunity when it comes to historical racial injustices, all right? Why did these claims fail in court, right? Despite the logical consistency of their equal protection argument, the federal courts dismissed these cases for three specific reasons. Sovereign immunity. The courts ruled that the government cannot be sued unless it consents to be sued, right? They argued that the 1988 Act only waived immunity for Japanese Americans specifically. It did not create a blanket waiver for all historical groups. You have to have lineage to Japanese people first and foremost. Okay, it was lineage based. Statute of limitations. Judges argued that the injuries of slavery were too old to be litigated in modern court. They conveniently ignored the debt of 400 billion, of course, discussed earlier, was never settled or closed. All right, now we know that the statute of limitation that doesn't bear any fruit. But political question doctrine. Okay, the courts essentially punted the issue, stating that reparations are a political issue for Congress to decide, not a legal issue for the courts to settle. All right. Legacy of 1988 strategy, the Fair Use Act helped birth this. That the U.S. court system was designed to protect the government rather than distribute justice for the clearing of the land. It shifted the strategy from litigation, suing the government to legislation for specific documentation. Has a specific documented claim that cannot be tethered, as you use the word tether, to any other group's history. Okay, so that's it. So the $400 billion amount was something they pulled out their ass. Literally, they pulled it out their ass. They just made the thing up. And then you can't use the Japanese Civil Liberties Act that demands and requires you to prove Japanese lineage, Japanese descent to be qualified. Okay, so when it was in court and they used it and they was arguing for the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, the judge was like, can any of you prove you have Japanese lineage? And once they said no, the court chuckled and laughed. Okay, so and also I believe they represented themselves in court, similar to Marcus Garvey. So now, with that being said, let's get back to Umar and let's hear it again. But now we know what we know.
Remember, there's nothing wrong. America got their own fitness.
Uh-oh.
Tom Ogle drove 200 miles
Oh,
on
damn.
2 gallons of gasoline.
Royal. But because we hate each other more than we took some of us for the same of the race.
You know, I could be speaking out of school, but my limited understanding of it is I think that they believe that the reparations belong to descendants of slaves.
Well, I'm going to say this as a Pan-Africanist, because we invented the reparations fight. It don't come from FBA.
And they did not invent nothing, because that's just a movement. That's not a lineage. Our lineage, and of course we did it in the 1800s, and we got little small victories here and there. But what he's saying, he's trying to compare a lineage to an organization that has some people in the lineage in it. Like, this is a stupid argument. But they constantly and consistently try to frame us as a group. So just watch that and correct them.
It don't come from ADOS. This was around before they were born. You feel me? Yes. Pan-Africanists gave birth to it. Reparations for me is not about different groups and sects of the race fighting for their crumb off the big pie. This should be one fight, one reparation. Do you feel me, Loon?
No.
We can split it up how we want to split it up after we get it. But by you fighting divided for the same restitution, you playing right into the hands of your enemy.
The white man. Now, when it comes to us, family, we can't get anything done ever until all of people that's melanated are included and can win their justice or whatever they're trying to fight for. Black Americans we can't get anything done if everybody who's melanated can't benefit and be free from their oppressors, colonizers, whatever. Okay, our success, our freedom is contingent on everybody else being freed and being successful. But all these same people, they can go out successful on their own, and they're not. And tagged to us. This is a ridiculous statement. This is a ridiculous solution, and this is why he created the Daffa ducks. Hey, bro, y'all Daffa ducks, y'all can do what y'all want to do, but this ain't got nothing to do with FBAs, man. This is a foolish demand.
There was one slavery, took some of us to the Caribbean. There was one slavery, took some of us to the Americas. There was one slavery, took some of us to Central and South America, right? But there was one African slavery.
And so I bet you he'll be one of those who would deny or downplay Africa's role in the slave trade. I guarantee you, we ask him, yo, who kidnapped blacks? He'll say the white man. I guarantee you.
Africans of the world, from the continent to the British, Canada had slavery, Australia had it, right? We should all come and sit down. Let's fight this together.
See, I think they reject
You
that.
would get it quicker.
Yeah.
You would get more because
Right.
guess what? It's a united front. But because we hate each other more than we hate racism, because we hate each
This is gaslighting, family. Now that his idea will be rejected as foolish, like it is, now whoever rejects his idea, they're the haters. They're the divisive people. They're the xenophobics and whatever crazy terminology they have for us. Because now this is narcissism. Because we rejects his crazy idea that's untested. What nation? So they're all going to just link their bank accounts together and say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, this sounds good. Some people are owed more because their labor and their injustice, like ours, lasted longest. We got a 400-year claim. South Africans, that apartheid was like 40 to 60 years. That wasn't that long compared to. So yeah, no. And you go, y'all go fight. Y'all fight. We'll fight our fights. You dig? And hopefully everybody win.
other more than we hate racism. I don't want to unite with no black Africans. I don't want to unite with no Caribbeans. And you got Africans saying the same thing. I don't want to unite with no descendants of no slaves, right? I want to fight my own thing. So ECOWAS got their own fight. Black British got their own fight.
When he says ECOWAS, that's slick, family. ECOWAS is a bunch of African nations who signed treaties to line themselves up with European colonizers. France, the UK, Britain, okay? And the ECOWAS, that's who Burkina Faso were down with. I think it was a 15-nation African nation thing, and that was their getting together thing. What that got to do with slavery? Like, these ECOWAS nations, our hands are bloody and dirty, dusty for selling us. So that's some slick stuff. But for him to, this guy likes to be on a panel where he pretty much only knows what he's talking about. Because, bro, why you mention ECOWAS? Because ECOWAS, and then he snuck in Sahel. The ECOWAS, those 3-4 nations, African nations that left ECOWAS, they went and did their own thing, and they're called the Sahel Alliance, something like that. That's Burkina Faso, Mali, all these slave trading nations. Like, why are they included?
They got their own fight. Black America with no descendants of no slaves, right? I want to fight my own thing. So ECOWAS got their own fight. Black British got their own fight. Canada got their own fight. Black America got their own fight.
Family, there is no such thing as a Black British. A Black British is a new name they gave themselves just recently. And most of them guys are recent immigrants. They are direct immigrants from Africa. Okay? And if they're first gen, then that means their parents were recently immigrated to Britain. These are not people who've been there for 100 years. These are recent 2010 immigrants from, or in the 2000s for sure, immigrants from Nigeria, one of these African countries. They're not Black Brits. They are Nigerians they are Nigerian Englishmen or Brits, whatever nationality they go by. Okay, they are Nigerian British people. Nigerian British, that's it. Or if they're from Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica, then they're Jamaican British, but nothing about them is Black. This is added language that Umar and these guys want to paste onto them to tether onto our struggles and fights. And we're not tethering ourselves to nothing these guys do. CARICOM, good luck, go be great. Hope you're successful. Hope you win your reparations case. But we're not trying to tag onto that. We're not calling it the Black Jamaican reparation case in CARICOM. We're not tagging Black to ECOWAS or Sahel Alliance, nothing. We're allowing everybody to do their own thing. We're not tagging Black to none of it. And it's really disgusting. The Prince of Ham and Cheese Croissants is a narcissistic psychopath. Exactly, Lord Maul. This guy's out of control, man. But he's the leader of Pan-Africans, and he has a new name for them.
And it's sectionalized, sectarian.
That's what I'm saying.
Nobody communicating with each other. So the white man going to play his old game of what? Divide and conquer, separate and rule.
That's why I wanted to have.
So Black folks wanting justice from our government, that's playing into the hands of white divide and conquer. Okay. Family, that is gaslighting. That is vitriol for Black Americans. We went over vitriol. And that is also disdain for Black Americans. Okay. A lot of Pan-Africans got disdain and vitriol for Black Americans who don't buy into the Black nationalist concept or the Pan-African nothing burger theory. They have disdain and vitriol for all of us. But here's a recent message from their leader. Wait, one more time. Let's get our brother, because we knock out those talking points like this.
What? What you want to say?
You don't know how this fucking country works.
Yeah, I do know how this fucking... Back up. In my face. You bugging out.
So you want to overload these?
Back up. Are you bugging?
Yeah, we do that to those talking points. And you'll notice that he had the microphone in his right hand. So he's actually a righty, but he knocked them out with his weak hand, the left hook. I thought that was very impressive. Normally a righty, they jab with their left and they cross hook with their righty to knock you out, like Deontay Wilder. Tank Davis is a lefty. So Tank Davis normally knocks you out with his left hand, right? So that's impressive, to knock somebody out with your weaker hand, the left hook. So you could tell he's a fighter, because somebody who's not fighting like that, like one of us would have dropped the mic and swung with our right hand, our strong hand. He hooked with his left hand. Yeah, so this guy, I believe he took some classes or some type of formal training. That's me off top, just by observing, as a boxing fan, observing his ability to naturally swing with his left hook and connect and knock out the target. All right. That was very impressive. So here we go right here. This is Umar's formal announcement of the D.A.F.A. DUX.
Hotep, my brothers and sisters, I am your brother and leader, Dr. Fool John Doe, and I'm here on behalf of our first national and international leader of Pan-Africans. I'm here in place of him as his successor as the current leader of all Pan-Africans. I've created a new name for Pan-Africans from all over the world, and it is D.A.F.A. DUX, which stands for Descendants of African Fleers to America. My hope is to Africanize Black Americans and make them the generic African, and to swap places and make Africans from Africa the generic Black people. With you all help, and with the help of COINTELPRO from America to Russia, I believe we can accomplish this. Salam alaikum.
All right, so you heard it from the horse's mouth. Yo, let's get that back one more time, yo. One more time. The Prince of what they say, Prince of Pancakes and Apple Cobbler. One more time. Give us that public service announcement. One more time, Doctor.
Hotep, my brothers and sisters.
Hey, did he say his name was Dr. Fool John Doe? That's hilarious.
Hotep, my brothers and sisters, I am your brother and leader, Dr. Fool John Doe, and I'm here on behalf of our first national and international leader of Pan-Africans. I'm here in place of him as his successor as the current leader of all Pan-Africans. I've created a new name for Pan-Africans from all over the world, and it is Daffa DUX, which stands for Descendants of African Fleers to America. My hope is to Africanize Black Americans and make them the generic African, and to swap places and make Africans from Africa the generic Black people. With you all help, and with the help of COINTELPRO from America to Russia, I believe we can accomplish this. Salam alaikum.
No. Yeah, that's your boy, Dr. Fool John Doe. My man said Daffa DUX is the new name for his cult hate group. That's why we need a hate crime bill in our favor. The Prince of Panda Express. Hey, yo, but do me a favor, family. We got 87 live people viewing and only 57 likes. Yeah, so you see, I'm able to do that. Cool stuff like that, funny stuff like that, clever stuff like that with donations. So go ahead and hit the Cash App. I pay for little programs like that. You dig? Where, help out the channel. So like a lot of the super chats and a lot of the Cash Apps, I put right back into the platform and purchase cool stuff like that. All right. So go ahead and support Unbiased Ron Cash App. But let's get into the topic. So there's a lot of things I want to talk about, but lately Tariq Nasheed been in his bag. He's been cooking, like really, really cooking. And here.
Let him cook. Let him cook now.
So he's been cooking on talking points that I've been saying recently, or I've been saying since the summer or a year ago. So I'm like, all right, cool. We got Tariq Nasheed also acknowledging the talking points. So it's a cool way to validate what I was saying for about a year was legit, right? Because I think some people be like, I don't know about that. But now you see it's the real deal. So without further ado, let me let Tariq Nasheed explain what I was talking about when I debated people on free blacks and what we called ourselves. So if y'all remember, not too long ago, I debated Ross' son on what we called ourselves. And he kept saying African. I was like, nah, they ain't call ourselves African. And this was a recent debate not too long ago. All right. And we talked about Garvey, and I did too. Y'all can imagine what I did with Garvey. But listen to Tariq Nasheed go into if we called ourselves African in the 1800s and the role of the ACS. I'm going to break all that down after he go in. All right? Check it out.
In fact, when we show up in your homeland, we're bringing something. We don't really get anything, but we bring. We invest in the businesses, we help the people, we bring things. The problem is when folks get over here, is stay away from the Akata, stay away from the Jarir, stay away from the Abids. We got a lot of negativity from other people who come over here, and then they start getting into our political business and then undermining us. That's antagonistic. They start getting into certain positions and then start bringing in their fellow people who come from an immigrant background and actively discriminating against us. We don't do that. See, you want to talk about antagonism. The antagonism is one-sided. What we do is make them accountable for the stuff that they do, and they don't like being held accountable. But it's a new day. It is a new day. You want to talk about antagonism, we are talking about our lineage, and then you get a bunch of people who tell us, why y'all claiming FBA? Y'all is African. That's antagonism when people try to tell us who we are and tell us about our history. That is antagonism. So we're making everybody accountable right now. So it's just a brand new day. People are kicking and screaming because they hate accountability. Because let's be real, for a long time, continental Africans have not been held accountable for a lot of janky stuff. A lot of continental Africans been getting away with a lot of shit, and they've not been held accountable, especially by us. See, there's been this unspoken rule that foundational Black Americans, we're never supposed to criticize them for anything they do. If we criticize them, that's just like the white man, just like the guy called earlier. You show negative images of Africans. These are what the white supremacists do. No, I'm clowning some of the people who call up talking dumb. I'm clowning them. That's part of the culture. But yeah, some of the Caribbeans too. But yeah, really the continental Africans, a lot of different melanated immigrants, they come here and they're not held accountable. But really, continental Africans have been given a pass for a long time. See, this is why us making them accountable is new. You see, even though they've been doing janky stuff to us for the longest, we haven't said nothing. We haven't said nothing. See, the thing is, for a long time, family, there's been a psychological necessity, the Pan-African folks, for like a motherland utopia. So Africa has been romanticized and mythologized. It's like a mythical heaven. So you put a lot of extras on it. You're not supposed to criticize the Black heaven because we're all supposed to attain to go back to the motherland one day and ascend back to our throne. Every time you talk about Africa, well, the African kings and our African queens, we just mythologized Africa so much, so it's almost become infallible. You're not supposed to talk about some of the janky stuff that's coming from there and happening there. You're not supposed to say it. And the whole Pan-African stuff, they come around and there was a demand for global racial solidarity. You see, there was this belief that, look, all people of African descent share a common destiny and we all got to unite and dismantle global white supremacy. That's idealistically, that sounds good, but you got to understand, how did we get hemmed up with white supremacy in the first place? Tethers. All right, let's be real. I'm a realist. I ain't gonna do all that pie in the sky shit for your ass, because I study history and I see what went right and what went wrong. All right, let's be very real. This whole thing, it's idealistic to say, hey, we all need to join hands because white supremacy is global and us Black people all around the world got to join hands and fight white supremacy. We got to ignore the fact we got in this situation because these musty niggas were sitting up here coinciding and collaborating with these damn white supremacists. Who are the main ones doing it? Some of these African tethers. Oh, they were selling everybody out, working with them. And that mentality ain't really going nowhere, to be honest. Family, Myron Gaines, understand, he comes from a whole bloodline of musty tethers. Those melanated Arabs from East Africa, they've been on that for the last 1,000 years, ladies and gentlemen. That ain't new. Myron Gaines ain't new. Africa's full of them. That's been the damn problem, especially over there in East Africa. Remember, some of the biggest slave traders working with the white supremacists were these melanated ass tethers. Tip who tip. It was a damn melanated Arab. Black as hell. Running slaves. Getting big money working with the British. Y'all look up Tip who tip. When I was over there in Zanzibar and Tanzania, they had his spot over there. He was operating up out of there. Yeah, that's a problem. I don't want to unite with those descendants. Yeah? Come on now. Yeah, Tip who tip. Here's his name. You look up Tip who. He was a big slave trader in East Africa. Huge. He made a lot of money. working with the British. Black as he want to be. An Arab. His dad was Arab. I think his mom was Bantu or something like that. Yeah. Tipu Tip. Look him up. Yeah, look him up. Well, there's a whole bunch of them, man. That's the problem. We ain't gonna ignore that. And that mindset is still here. We still got people with that mindset. Yeah. So that's why African can never mean black. You have Arab, Africans, and white. Yeah, you do. You have. Yeah. This whole thing, and I talked about this on my broadcast the other day. Just the term African. When they start telling us we all African, y'all is African. All that FBA stuff. Y'all is African. What you talking about? Yeah, Africans were brought over here. Africans this, Africans that. And let me say this, family, don't let them run that game, because the word African, the term African, and I broke this down on my YouTube show the other day. We didn't start calling ourselves African over here until 1770s. Before the 1770s, ladies and gentlemen, and again, I challenge anybody to, because I bring scholarship, ladies and gentlemen. I challenge any of you to prove me wrong. Show me where we use the word African to describe ourselves over here before the 1770s. I challenge anybody. You won't find it. Nobody used that term. Look it up. This is just scholarship. None of us used the term African. Nobody went by African. Nobody. We started using African around the time of the American Revolution. We never used that term. Before the 1770s, never. Now we're using the term Negro. Spanish
It's
for black.
actually very cool.
Hey, beloved, how are you? What's
Hello,
going on with
Tariq.
you? Hey, how you doing, dear?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
I am good. I like the hair today. I like it. Yes,
Thank you. And I like the color of the shirt today. It looks like mine.
Yeah, we're matching. We twins right now. How's everything? Are you in Nigeria or England or the UK? I forgot.
Nigeria.
You're in Nigeria still. Okay. Yes, indeed.
Oh, really, Omi? Yeah,
Indeed.
I'm in Nigeria. So would you like to do one?
Yeah, let's do a battle real quick while I'm chopping it up with the family. Here we go. All right.
Okay, no problem.
Let's get Miss Wendy up here. We're doing a quick battle. Yes,
Guys,
indeed.
thank you. Omi, thank you.
Yes, indeed. How's everything in Nigeria, Miss Wendy?
Everything is fine. The weather is hot though, but it's okay. It's fine.
Oh, is that okay? What did you do today out there?
Oh, I didn't do anything much. It's
Okay, I
easy
forgot.
break, so it's more like what am I going to do today?
Okay.
Eh,
Now, what do you
So
normally? Oh, now over there in Nigeria, what do you normally eat for breakfast? What do you have for breakfast over there?
different things depends on you. I like bread and tea.
Bread and tea. Okay. Okay.
Yes, I like bread and tea. So I eat bread and tea very
That
much.
part is
Then
irrelevant, but the term. So he broke down African. We didn't really use African, and he briefly went into that. Now that's here a lot. I was cooking
there's something
revenue
we
on
call
that over
Accra.
here. We were debating that way before he even entered a Tariq Nasheed platform. I've been kicking his ass over here with that, and he tried to run to Tariq Nasheed and debate that. So that's what people do, family. People go to our different platforms. They have like a weird tether thought, and they get cooked, and they'll act like it never happened, and then go to a different FBA platform and try to argue that thing again. Now, this time they're more aware of what we would say possibly. So they'll try to be more sharpened and try to have a rebuttal for that. So that's what they do. They're like bacteria. You know how bacteria, when you're infected with a bug, which is bacteria, you're prescribed antibiotics, right? And then it destroys some of the bacteria, but leaves some behind. Now that bacteria when it comes back up, that mock probably ain't gonna work on something else. They gotta keep giving you different things. Family, you ever notice that that bug keep coming back? They gotta prescribe you with different antibiotics before you need some major surgery. So what happens is that those bacteria bugs, they start to develop an immunity to those antibiotics, and they become what is called a super bug. And that super bug usually be the end of your life, because they had developed a resistance to all antibiotics. So now none of them work, but that's a super bug. Look that up. So that bug, these guys are bugs. Uh, they're bacteria bugs, and they develop a resistance to those antibiotics, and they become a super bug, a super tether. And they, it takes a skilled professional, expert like myself, and those that's in these spaces like Tariq, Jason Black, all these guys. It take an expert to defeat them now. Okay. So that's where they at. So they'll go to Afro Elite, they'll go to this person, debate, get cooked, and then go to another platform. Now they're kind of prepared for what we would say, and they'll develop a rebuttal for that. And they become more difficult to get up out of there, not as easy as once before. They become super tethers. And it takes a skilled professional like myself to beat them on that level. All right. But yeah. So now Tariq briefly touched on that, how they can go by the word Africa or African in one live. So this is a whole separate live. This was his Sunday live, actually, where our brother Adonis Live pulled up and gave an update on the situation when he got arrested for knocking out that suspected white tea supremacist in Romania. So now Tariq Nasheed picked up on it again. So you see that this is becoming something that he's taking a liking to. All right, how we didn't use the word we didn't call ourselves African or even use the word Africa that much as free blacks in America in the 1800s. Listen, before Emancipation Proclamation.
Family.
And don't forget to like the video. Okay, at the very least, like the video, and those who would like to support the Cash App, Super Chat. Matter of fact, I got some Super Chats. Hold, let me read these. So, Von B Easy said $4.99, so $4.99 Super Chat in the building. He said D.A.F.A sound like an He said D.A.F.A sounds like an off-brand FUBU clothing line or something. Facts. Yeah, that D.A.F.A is hilarious. We could spin that many ways. We got somebody sent the $5 Super Chat. He said, Are you going live on TikTok tonight? So what time? So the TikTok live's been a little hard for me because I can't even go on my laptop or phone. Like, I can only go on my iPad. That's like weird as hell. I can only go live so far on my iPad on TikTok, which is like weird. But check it. So maybe I'll do a test run. So make sure you guys follow me on TikTok. By Ron on TikTok. Everybody who followed me, I've been following everybody back. And if I haven't got to you just yet, it must have been a recent follow. All of the late follows that you guys sent me about 2-3 weeks ago, I followed everybody back. So we got another super chat in the building for my peoples, $5 super chat as well. The Lineage Love is in the building. So when does he tell Jamaicans they are not Jamaican but African? Calling themselves Jamaicans is identifying with the white colonizer. Exactly, especially from their logic. Yeah, they're not going to tell Haitians, Dominicans, they're not going to tell Jamaicans, anybody from the West Indies that they're not West Indian, they're not St. Croix and Belizean and Bohemian. You're not that. You're African. They won't tell none of them that. That's why we know that they are that they have full disdain and vitriol for Black Americans only. Okay, so the hate is geared towards us. All right, let me see how these likes are looking, because the family used to be on point with the likes. Let me see how we're looking right now. Yeah, now the likes are, come on, family. The likes are terrible. Come on, man. We're like damn it 30 out the way. All right. So anyway, pay attention to our big brother Tariq Nasheed going into how we never called ourselves African like that. When I say never, I'm not saying absolutely never. I'm saying maybe one or two people, a handful of people. But the overall census, Black Americans did not call themselves African. Check it out. Wait, make sure I ain't getting more super chats. Hold on. Okay, wait. We got another super chat. We got $10 from Ron's 1234. If we all brothers, why none of them support our reparations movement? Yeah, great point. So $10 super chat, Lineage Love for Ron's 1234. Right. Why we get nothing but critique and hate for asking not asking, demanding our government for compensation. This had nothing to do with an African. This had nothing to do with an immigrant anywhere in the world. This had nothing to do with individuals. This was a accountability call that we were making directly to our American national government. Individuals stepped up and start to fight with us. Now, we didn't step in the way of New Africa Republic, even though their reparations claim was bogus. No stepped in front of Cobra failures, trying to ask for reparations, and all these other Black nationalists and Pan-African groups that wanted that fake like they was fighting for reparations. None of us stepped in their way, and they were wrong as hell. We let them go out there and make a fool of themselves. Now here we come, and everybody and their mother who failed want to direct us, give us directives and advice and guidance. Like, no, you just failed. I don't want your advice to fail like you, and you're using the same failure language. You dig? So, yeah, you're using the same language that caused you to fail. You're using a race-based language, all right, to ask for reparations. That cannot work. It has to be lineage-based. The Civil Liberties Act of 1988, that was directly exclusively for not all Asians, because the Japanese are under the Asian race banner. But this Civil Liberties Act of 1988 was not for all Asians. This was for only Asians that can prove lineage, ancestry to the Japanese. Okay? Just the Japanese. No Chinese, no some, whoever else in that racial classification can have Philippines. Nope. All those Asians were excluded from the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 that was only for people of the Japanese lineage. And even all Japanese were not entitled to that. Only those who can prove that they were displaced as a result of World War II or in an internment camp. And not even all of them people. Only in America, because there were Japanese people being displaced in other countries and they were in camps in other countries, but even they were excluded. This was for Japanese Americans only, and only those who were displaced physically and thrown into internment camps. Only they were entitled to 20 grand per person. And yes, their heirs did collect on behalf of the ones who passed, because World War II was way earlier. And I just told you the 1988 Civil Liberties Act says many years later, 40 something years later, people collect on behalf of their relatives. So nobody's going to lie to us and tell us that can't happen that way. It has to be the living people themselves. Stop the cap. Matter of fact, here.
Stop the cap.
All right. Like I said, family, like the video. Make sure everybody like the video. We're down on likes, which is crazy. Just like the video. Pay attention to the breakdown of how we overall didn't call ourselves African. And check it out. And then, so I got 2 videos where he's going to explain that. Then I'm going to go in with the in-depth research.
We've never identified as African until 1770, the 1770s. We've never identified as African on this land. Nobody ever used the word African. Nobody used the word African. until the 1770s. I'm gonna say that like Umar 3 times. Nobody used the word African until the 1770s. Look it up. Come on, let's do some scholarship here. See, I like to do scholarship here. I'm gonna talk slow so you can fact check everything I'm saying. We've never used the term African to describe ourselves on this land until the 1770s, okay? In fact, the first time a person used the term Africa to describe themselves was actually in 1520. It was a Moor, Leo, I think his name, Leo Africanus, which meant Leo the African, and he was he got caught. He was up in North Africa. He got caught by the Spanish, and they took him up there. He was very intelligent, and he knew geography, and he knew how to map out the whole continent of Africa, so he was useful. So he was the first. At the time, during the Renaissance, people's names would be associated with a landmass. So that was kind of a Renaissance thing. Like Albert of Venetia, you know, it was that type of thing. So he was like, I'm Leo of Africa. I'm Leo the African. So that the first time a person identified themselves as an African, around 1520, yeah, Africanus is just a Latinized version of African. Look up everything I'm saying, look it up in real time. Leo Africanus. That was his Christian name. His name was Ibn something. He was a Muslim, but he converted to Christianity. Follow me. But on this land, ladies and gentlemen, the black people never used the term African to describe themselves. Never. They used Negro, black. If they came from a certain tribe, they might use a tribe. If they were part of an indigenous tribe, they would say that. But remember, when they got on the plantations, they made them stop doing that. Hey, don't identify with none of that stuff. Don't identify with that African tribe. Don't identify with those Native American tribes. Because remember, we were all meshed in. The Africans and the indigenous people here were meshed in. Don't ever forget that. And it was deep. They were all meshed in together. Understand that. Many people identified, even though they were enslaved, they would identify with their Native American side. They would, in fact, they would get out of slavery by having freedom suits saying, hey, I shouldn't be enslaved. I know I look like a Negro, but my mother's a Native American. My mother's an Indian. So they would get out of slavery. Follow me here. I'm giving you some scholarship. Why did we start having people use the term African in the 1770s, right around that time? 1770s. Because people like to bring up this book. There was a book written by this unknown author that was found, and the book was dated back to 1782, and he said he was an African American. Why 1782? Right around that time, 1770, 1782, around that time. That's when we started seeing it. We started seeing it, ladies and gentlemen, because that was the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War was happening, okay? So America was fighting, the white people here, they were fighting Britain. They were fighting Britain, trying to get their sovereignty, and there were a lot of black people who was fighting in the Revolutionary War too. So a lot of the black people here started to adopt the language of the white colonists in how they were dealing with British, have their own American identity outside of Britain. They didn't want to just be a British colony. So they were shedding their identity as British subjects and inventing a new identity. So a unified American political identity so they could justify their sovereignty. Got it? Y'all follow me? So a lot of black activists, they were like, well, we need a collective identity too. Since, you know, we can't, these white supremacists are funny style, let's get a somewhat of a national identity as well. Let's say African, because the Europeans, they're familiar with Africa. You know, you have the Dutch Africa Royal Trading Company. So they were familiar with the word Africa. That was synonymous with international trade and slave ships, and, you know, the word Africa was around. So they said, let's use the word Africa to kind of give us a nationalized identity too, the way the British are doing. Because the British, not the British, but the white Americans. The white Americans, they were like, talking about international law, natural rights, being a distinct people. So some of the black people said, okay, we can use that same language. We are an African people, which is a continent, that's a landmass. We were shipped, we were shipped over, brought through international waters, and all of this international law conversation was in the air. They say, okay, so since the white Americans are getting their sovereignty and getting their rights based on these international laws and this international law language, let us use the same thing. That's why they use the term African. They weren't trying to connect with Africa at all. Yeah, Prince Hall was one of the main ones using that term. Prince Hall fought in the Revolutionary War. So Prince Hall was one of the first people doing that. And he started the Prince Hall Masons out here. He got a charter from England and started the African Lodge. All right? They were naming it that for a reason. So there was a wave of using the term African right around the 1770s, 1780s, big time. The African Lodge, the African Methodist Church, they kept using the word African in all of these different. And what they would do, they would also use the colonist arguments against them in a lot of the early freedom petitions, because they were using this to get freedom or trying to get freedom. They would put out petitions, and like Prince Hall was one of the people helping to get people out of slavery. He was like, hey, look, we are the sons of Africa. We have natural rights, and we want to show the hypocrisy of the white colonists. They're fighting for liberty from Britain, and we're fighting for liberty here as an African people. So they were just using it for a political thing, and it would work for the time. It worked for a little while, it worked. But when these white supremacists started to really get their sovereignty, when they got their weight up, they were like, you know what? African just means another Negro. That means a foreign Negro. They stopped respecting the sovereignty language of it, okay? They entertained it for a minute, then shortly after, they were like, we running things over here now, so that African shit don't mean nothing. In fact, that means you're primitive. Yeah, African has become racialized now. It became racialized, all right? And what happened was, at the time, they had to stop using the Native American thing too. That was another thing, because remember, in the American Revolution, a lot of the Aboriginal people and the natives were fighting with the British. They fought on the side of the British because the British was promising, hey, listen, if we win, we're not going to expand into these Aboriginal lands. We're not going to go and decimate some of your Indian lands. We're going to kind of chill out if we win. So just rock with us and we're going to make sure you good. It was that. So a lot of Aboriginal and Native people said, okay, we'll rock with the British then. When the British got whooped on, so now there's a massive hostility towards all of the natives now. All right, now let's come on now, look up what I'm saying. All right. What didn't catch on? What didn't catch on? Okay, I don't know what you're saying, brother. Okay. Just follow what I'm saying. Just somebody said that didn't catch on in large numbers. Follow me. It was something in the north. Just follow me. Listen, just learn, brother. Just learn. Just learn. All right. But they had to get away from the native thing altogether for a minute. That's why a lot of us just got lumped with the just African. It became very bad to start saying anything Native American, anything indigenous for a minute right after the Revolutionary War. You see? Because if you said you were African, that exposed more hypocrisy than just saying you're Native. See, the white revolutionaries over here, they would rationalize the genocide against the Native people. It was like land seizure, settlement, But the African identity, that made them confront the slave trade itself. When you said African, that pointed to the slave ships, that implicated European powers, that made slavery an active crime. Now, you just couldn't go muscle somebody off a piece of land. So politically, there was a reason for using the term African and getting away from the native term. You had to get away from that. Indian became a liability. Yeah. For a short minute, African became a protective legal identity, because a lot of the Indian nations, they were sovereign nations. So the U.S. just whooped on a sovereign nation, which was Britain. So now they're whooping on and just basically committing genocide against these native nations. And the native claims were being erased. The natives didn't have no backup, so they just committed a genocide on them. They just go wipe out a whole tribe. Oh, you native, get up out of here. And we're gonna just take your land. Oh, manifest destiny, get out of here. You see? So they had to get away from that. That's why some of the black people who were identifying as native, they were waging all out war on them, just like the Seminole War, all right? It was black people saying, hey, we're Seminoles. They had the U.S. government waging war against them, and they were fighting back and actually beating the U.S. government. That's why they don't like to talk about the Seminole War in a real way. They don't really like to talk about it the way they need to talk about it. But here's the thing. So now, after a few years up in the North, using the term African, it became a liability. It didn't work anymore because the white supremacists, they started getting their weight up, and they're like, yeah, African, yeah, we don't respect that. African, you're gonna be a slave too. Yeah, African is racialized. They made African a racialized thing, and you had people like Thomas Jefferson and people like that talking about how inferior the African race is and black people are inferior in his book, The Letters to the State of Virginia. And they started to use the African term against people. So they started doing things like having the American Colonization Society. So let's get into Pan-Africanism. See, all of these Back to Africa movements, almost all of them were started by the white supremacists. Y'all ready to go there tonight? Are y'all ready to go there tonight, ladies and gentlemen? A lot of these Back to Africa movements were started by the white supremacists. They've always saw a problem with the free black people. So now, after the American Revolution, African, it functioned strategically for a minute. By the 1800s, it became dangerous. You see? It became dangerous because there was a lot of uprisings. Then you had the Haitian Revolution, so they were on alert with that. So they said, you know what, since y'all want to be African so bad, why don't y'all go back? Why don't you go back to your motherland? And this was for the free black people. They wanted the free black people to go back. So you had slave owners funding the American Colonization Society. They got a couple of black people to be the front people. The American Colonization Society that go into Liberia, that was funded not just by white people. It was funded by slave owners. Look that up. The dude who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, Francis Scott Key, he was one of the people. All right? So they were like, since y'all African, y'all foreigners here. Since you're foreigners here and you don't like it, why don't you go on back over there? So they started the American Colonization Society to try to send people back. And there were a lot of black activists who saw the con game for what it was. Because see, the white supremacists thought, okay, these free black people, they are a threat to slavery. See, remember, the American Colonization Society was trying to send free blacks over to Africa, not the enslaved. They saw free black people as a threat. They're like, look, if you got these free black people and some of them are thriving, that's going to inspire black people on the plantation to get the hell up out of there. So we need to get these free blacks out. These free blacks are a threat. So they started this whole back to Africa nonsense that was white funded. The black grassroots at the time, they rejected it, ladies and gentlemen. The black grassroots rejected it.
Let him cook.
They were actively going around, the black grassroots were going around, hey, y'all stop that African shit. Do y'all understand? You had activists in the 1800s talking like we're talking now. Stop all that African talk. We're not African. There was a whole movement. They were showing up at the AME church and all of these places by the thousands. Up in Philadelphia, 3,000 brothers showed up, cut that African shit out, telling them, don't start that, go to Africa. We ain't from Africa. 3,000 people showed up to that church telling them, cut that Africa shit out. Look up what I'm telling you. Google, do whatever you need to do. I'm telling you, we rejected that. And the irony is, you know who one of the main spokespersons rejecting that? Frederick Douglass, who Umar is running. He got the struggle school named after. Frederick Douglass was the main person saying, hey, we ain't African. We're native here. We've been here too long. This is our land. We ain't going to no damn Africa. Frederick Douglass was the main one against that. Look that up. Frederick Douglass argued explicitly against that African talk. He was like, no, y'all making the block hot with that. We got birthright. This is our land. Harriet Tubman was talking about this is our land. Yes, Frederick was vehemently against not only going to Africa, calling ourselves African, he was against that. Look up what I'm telling you. David Walker rejected it. All of the, look up, he had the Walker's appeal to the colored citizens of the world. They said, hey, we can use the word color, the people of color, Negro. But yeah, that African stuff, no, you're making us foreigners in a land that we cultivated. You understand? They were explicitly changing the names. They started changing the names of churches. They would change the name of schools from African to colored. They were like, hey, don't call us African. We are not African. No disrespect, but this is our land. We've always stood on lineage business. We knew then we're not guests here. We are the real Americans. We are more American than anybody because we stand on the principles of what America should be. You understand? So there was books and publications all over the United States saying, hey, that African shit, that's a pre. You understand? Man, even Prince Hall started getting away from that African talk later on down the line. Yeah? You had people saying, hey, we were born here. America is our home. We have watered this soil with our blood. You had Samuel Cornish, these people, the co-founder of the Freedom's Journal, talking about we are the true Americans. We're not no African nationhood. Yeah? We avoided that altogether. But I want y'all to understand something. These Pan-African movements, all of this, y'all need to go back to Africa. That started with Thomas Jefferson. In that book, when I talked about the letters to the state of Virginia, he was saying stuff to the effect of, yeah, some of the freed black people, yeah, we might need to get them up out of here. We need to send them somewhere. They're a threat. It's going to be a race war if they sit up here. This was Thomas Jefferson saying this in the 1785. He was saying this early on. And Henry Clay and Francis Scott Key and Madison and Monroe, they were like, hey, let's send them to Liberia. You know? Abraham Lincoln was trying to send black people to Panama. Then I think Belize, it was a few places he was trying to send us. And we're like, no, I think they sent some people to Haiti, had to bring them back because it was like people got sick and all that. They sent about 300-400 people over there. So they'd always had these little white supremacist movements of them trying to send us up out of here, all backed by the white tea supremacists. You understand? Another senator named Matthew Bueller, he was a former Confederate. He introduced a federal bill around 1890 to send black people to Africa because we were getting political power. Y'all look up all the dates I'm telling you. All of these white supremacists kept trying to fund movements to send us up out of here. You understand? Even the movement to keep us in the South, the Rockefellers, all these people, these philanthropists were funding some of these HBCUs, and they wanted to keep us in the South because they didn't want us to come up north and start taking over some of these other industries. So they wanted to keep us in low-wage employment positions. That's why they were funding a lot of those HBCUs in southern schools and trade schools in the South. They wanted to ensure a docile, low-wage workforce. But then when World War I happened, they needed workers in the North because you couldn't bring in them immigrants. You couldn't bring those immigrants in. So that's when we started going to the North and getting those damn Northern jobs. That's when that first Great Migration happened, because you couldn't bring them European immigrants over no more because they were from hostile nations. So now you got all these black people living in the North. Come on, y'all follow me here. I'm giving you some chronology. Follow me. So now you got all these black people in the North who weren't even supposed to be there. Just by circumstance, they're in the North. We're in the North, turning up in the North. We got the Harlem Renaissance. We turning up in the North. Now we got Garvey shows up in the North. Garvey shows up with some back to Africa. We need to go to Africa. Whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. Oh, we need to go to Africa, guys. Oh, let's go to Africa. We're gonna talk about Garvey and his meeting with the Grand Wizard of the Klan. He met with Edward Young Clark. Garvey was getting chipped off by some of them Klan people. A lot of those white supremacists were supporting Garvey. So you got this Jamaican coming over here, having little secret meetings with the Klan, talking about we need to get up out of here. There were other people who supported Garvey too. When Garvey got hemmed up with the mail fraud, there were other white supremacists supporting him. Ernest Cox and Theodore Bilbo. These were white supremacists, straight up and down. They were supporting him. And they were supporting former members of the UNIA, Garvey's organization. They tried to do another Back to Africa, Liberia scam, where they were going to try to get us to go to Africa, and they got some of those Garvey people to try to co-sign that. Come on now. And you had some of these eugenicists, these white supremacists who were eugenicists trying to fund Back to Africa movements for us. A dude, Draper, around 1937, he founded the Pioneer Fund. And he financed a Back to Africa. Look up Wycliffe Draper, ladies and gentlemen. He funded a Back to Africa movement. This was a straight up eugenicist and a white supremacist. Why are all these damn white supremacists funding these damn Back to Africa movements? And in the 1960s, and hell, in the 1950s, the CIA was funding a lot of Pan-African organizations, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah? Look up the American Society of African Culture. That was funded by the CIA. That was another one of these Pan-African organizations. What they did, they would fund these groups to do these apolitical cultural festivals, all right? They didn't want anybody to think like a revolutionary. All the revolutionaries started to get neutralized. So what they would do, the CIA would fund all of these Pan-African groups to basically focus just on African culture, putting on dashikis, playing drums, rubbing shea butter on, doing tribal dances. They would fund that with a blank check. Just go over there, dance, be apolitical, don't talk about nothing political, tap back in, find your culture, go over there to find yourself. Go over there and eat some bush meat. Go over there and eat some egusi. You understand? That's what they were doing. They would just go over there and just get into cultural festivals. The CIA was funding this. Look this stuff up that I'm telling you. Look this stuff up. Yeah. You're not going to be no threat, but go over there and get intel. You do all that cultural stuff, and people who join this organization, who's talking anything about politics or revolution, make a little dossier for them. Get a little dossier on them and give us their information. You see? That's all that year of return stuff they do now. It's just like, you go over there, eat some egusi, come back. Just like Umar. Umar went over there, got citizenship, did a little ritual, and brought his ass right back over here. You go over there, get citizenship, eat some jollof, and then come back. Okay? And then talk about how you ain't going to identify with America. Then why are you over there? I would never identify as an American. Then why are you coming back? How come you ain't over there building Wakanda and all that shit? Yeah? Let me tell you something. See, Pan-Africanism, ladies and gentlemen, they treat Pan-Africanism as a religion. Pan-Africanism is a religion, and you don't have to you don't have to deliver anything. Yeah? It's a religion, and then Africa itself becomes heaven. It's the promised land that you never get to. See, they treat Africa like some religions treat the afterlife. It's a perfect future destination. It absolves people from fixing material conditions right now. It's just like heaven. It's coming later. You don't have to require no measurable progress, no housing, no education, no land ownership, no political power, nothing. Oh, one day we're going to go back to the motherland, and we're going to sit on our throne in the motherland. Yeah, it's like Akon City. Oh yeah, it's always some big, Akon City. It's going to be flying saucers and bushmeat floating. You could just grab bushmeat out the air. Come on, man. Yeah, we cool on that shit. Yeah, the faith, it replaces accountability. See, they frame the Pan-Africanism in the spiritual language, awake by consciousness return, the year of return. And see, they use Africa as an abstract. It's an abstract. It's mythologized. So you're going to go over there and just all this beautiful land, and you're going to walk with the animals. You're going to be barefoot picking berries, and you're going to have 8 wives. Oh, it's going to be so beautiful. Oh, you're going to be walking barefoot in the beautiful grass. And it's just going to be so, we're going to go back to our throne. And you get over there and step in some human shit, and it's going to be musty. They're not telling you the truth. No, I'm not dissing anybody, but let's stop playing games. Let's stop playing games. They treat it like a religion. It's an abstract heaven. You understand? And if you criticize heaven, what is that? See, you can't, with the Pan-Africanists, you can't criticize heaven. Yeah. That's heresy. If you go over there and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm over here. It stank, and I don't really like the food. And somebody just tried to scam me out of some money, and people are musty. This don't seem like heaven. How dare you talk about the motherland? How dare you talk about your motherland? You can't say that about the motherland. I can't say this nigga's musty and he tried to scam me. I can't say that. We can't do that. You want to be with the white man because I don't want to go and get scammed. Come on, man. We can't criticize it or tell the truth. That messes up the religious framing of it. I can't say, hey, why is this dude shitting on a sidewalk? I can't say nothing. Don't say that. The white man tricked him. Okay. Can the white man give him some toilet paper? Because he didn't wipe his ass. I mean, damn, can we do something about this? Come on. Listen, that Pan-African talk is done. It's done. We are foundational Black Americans. This is it. We're getting tangible results here. We built this land. We're on our homeland right now. And we're standing on lineage business just like Frederick Douglass stood on lineage business. Just like Harriet Tubman stood on lineage business. Just like David Walker and so many others stood on lineage business. You understand? So that's what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen. We're standing on lineage business and don't owe nobody nothing, and we're not going to be shamed.
All right. So a lot of that was deep. He actually did another video today. I'm going to play a little later. First, I want to just speak on and give some more historical reference of what he was speaking about in layman terms to catch everybody up. Okay. But before I do that, here's Umar Johnson introducing D.A.F.A. And then he made an amendment to it. So this is him on a podcast introducing D.A.F.A. DUX. Well, right now D.A.F.A. And then he made an amendment to D.A.F.A. DUX. Okay, so here's D.A.F.A. in real time and the need for it. In his words,
our brothers and sisters abroad, and that looks to build relationships with them as far as that can be done. So my movement to counteract the negativity of these movements we're discussing is going to be the Daffa movement. D.A.F.A, descendants of African freedmen in America. Remember, and that looks to build relationships with them as far as that can be done. So my movement to counteract the negativity of these movements we're discussing is going to be the Daffa movement. D.A.F.A, descendants of African freedmen.
Yeah, that was a moment to laugh at how he overemphasized freedmen. But like I said, I predicted that this guy I predicted almost a whole year ago, the beginning of summertime in Georgia. I said, yo, this guy, his next grift, he's going to try to be the leader of a lineage. But I thought he would just try to hijack FBA or Adolf outright.
In America, remember
outright, and try to be the loudest voice and do that. But this is close enough. My prediction is close enough. My research and journalism have built a profile for Umar. I say he's going to try to be the leader of a lineage. But that's his next grift, because he's losing all respect and credibility in this school thing. And people laughed with me. They didn't laugh at me, but they laughed at the the thought, but a lot of you guys ain't think he would. And look where you at now, family. So I was almost spot on when I said this guy next grift is to claim leadership of a lineage, which is impossible to do. But this is close enough. I was right.
After freedom came, we were known as what? Freedmen. That was a legal classification. We were the freedmen. My 3-time great-grandfather George fought in the Civil War. My 4-time great-grandfather Steve fought in the Civil War. My cousins Lewis and Charles, the sons of Frederick Douglass, fought in the Civil War. I'm a descendant of freedmen who fought to keep this country from being divided. And we have rights as fighting as descendants of African, not no American. You ain't never putting that in no title, no organization of mine. Descendants of African freedmen in America.
D.A.F.A. DUX, all. D.A.F.A. be all folks, boy. D.A.F.A. be all folks. That'll be all folks. D.A.F.A. all folks. Yeah, this guy said descendants of African freedmen in America. But D.A.F.A. He changed his mind. Okay, he changed his mind. But one more time, that freedman emphasis is funny as hell. One more time.
Move ready.
Get it. When I look at all of the movements together, you know, I'm just concerned that we do have a lot of infighting. But with that being said,
well, that's okay because I'm bringing the solution to this. Since we knocked on the door of FDMG being ready.
Now, he just named the new name for all Pan-Africans. So family, when you're in these Pan-African spaces, just make sure, these black national spaces, just make sure that to call them D.A.F.A. And you can say D.A.F.A. DUX, DUX. All right. And let them know why you're calling that, because they have a leader. And we don't care how they say he ain't their leader. Just like they give us a leader when we're saying we ain't got a leader, and they give us a leader, they forge us a leader anyway. Well, guess what? We're going to forge them all with a leader as well. This is their leader, Dr. Fool John Doe. Okay, that's his full name. Dr. Fool John Doe. But this right here is hilarious. It's emphasis on freedmen.
Be a progressive American African movement that looks out for the best interests of the American.
He just said American African. All right.
People that does not demonize our brothers and sisters abroad and that looks to build relationships with them as far as that can be done. So my movement to counteract the negativity of these movements we're discussing is going to be the D.A.F.A. movement. D.A.F.A. Descendants
why
of
does he gotta add that
freedmen in America.
Everything,
Remember, Loom.
That is hilarious. African freedmen of Americans, or whatever he said, Africans and American. But then he came back and said, so he changed his tune a little bit. Somebody must have got in touch with him.
And I'm here on behalf of our first national and international leader of Pan-Africans. I'm here in place of him as his successor as the current leader of all Pan-Africans. I've created a new name for Pan-Africans from all over the world, and it is D.A.F.A. DUX, which stands for descendants of African fleers to America. My hope is to as Americans make the Africans from Africa the generic black people. With you all help, and with the help of COINTELPRO from America
there you go.
to Russia, I believe
said,
we can accomplish this.
He changed his
Salam
mind.
alaikum.
D.A.F.A. stands for descendants of African fleers to America. Descendants of African fleers to America. Yeah, this guy is just extra. Everything he does is always going to be extra, yo. And because he believes that, people want to hear that. Like people love, our people unfortunately are stuck into, preaching. So in order to be credible, you got to preach. So I might, I might start preaching the lovely word of FBA. You dig? Seems like somehow that grabs our attention. My man said the fleeing nation. He's gonna co-sign a bunch of fleers. Okay? That's your boy Umar. But I want to piggyback on or veggie back on organic back on Tariq Nasheed going into. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to plug this charger in. Yeah, I want to piggyback on, or I'm sorry, organic back, veggie back on Tariq Nasheed in-depth breakdown of the ACS. Because some of us are familiar with that through me. And if you haven't came to this channel, the ACS don't really mean that much to you. All right. So what I'm going to do is break down the ACS. Why they got started. What was their intentions, right? Their goals. So the American colonization. Let's get the bigger thumbnail. Right over here. Nope. Here. Okay. So family, yeah, once again, like the video. Make sure you like the video. That doesn't cost you a dime. But if you want a super chat message to support, if you want to send a cash app, you can do that as well. But let's get it. Let's get it. The American Colonization Society, which is known as the ACS, was founded in 1816. Now, these dates matter. Right? They matter a lot. They were founded in 1816, right? It was one of the most paradoxical organizations in American history. It was a big tent coalition that brought together bitter enemies, slaveholders allegedly or purported, they didn't want no damn enemies, but slaveholders, philanthropists, and clergy. Okay. Now look, these so-called bitter enemies, the abolitionists, the Quakers, and the slaveholders. Oh, nah, they don't get down, but they came together. They came together when it comes to getting rid of blacks, when it comes to displacing us in another land, foreign to America, or they'll come together on that goal. What about the other so-called bitter enemies in the night, almost 100 years later? With Marcus Garvey and the KKK. Aren't they sworn enemies? Aren't they bitter enemies? Allegedly, no. Did these people come together with one agenda to displace us outside the country to a foreign land? All right. The ACS, let's see. Okay. So the ACS came together and formed in 1816. And 5 years later, in 1821, the ACS, the American Colonization Society, purchased, often through the threat of force by U.S. Navy officers, a strip of land on the West African coast. They named the colony Liberia, from the Latin liber, meaning free, and its capital Monrovia, after U.S. President James Monroe, a staunch supporter. Okay, so while the ACS portrayed itself as a charitable organization, the vast majority of the foundational of us, FBA's, Foundation Black Americans, saw it as a scheme for deportation. So family, our antennas was up. While these guys were trying to pitch this, oh, nah, it's the motherland, as Tariq Nasheed articulated. Oh, this is heaven, milk and honey. Oh my God, so many virgins over here. Just try it. You'll like. Mikey likes it. So Now, this was led by figures like Richard Allen and James Fortin. Thousands of Black Americans argue that we and they were native born inhabitants. That is a quote. Richard Allen, who founded the African Methodist Episcopal Church, right? So isn't he pro ACS? Isn't he pro Africa? He named his church, but like Tariq Nasheed said, everybody who's naming themselves after Africa started to say, ain't a good name. So a lot of the church members wanted to change the name from African to something else. Y'all can Google that. Google did the people of position and power in the American Methodist Episcopal Church want to change the name from African to something else. That's a fact. So again, Richard Allen and James Fortin and like Tariq Nasheed articulated, thousands of other Blacks argue that they were native born inhabitants, earned their place through generations of blood, sweat, and tears. And that's also a quote. So when you got these Pan-Africans who want to rewrite history, whitewash history, or Black or Africanized history, yes, listen, they are no different than white supremacists. I'm telling you, they are the other side. When one person is on your shoulder whispering bad advice, the white supremacists, you have the tethers, the African tethers on the other shoulder giving you bad advice. So many felt that leaving for Liberia would be an act of betrayal against their brothers and sisters who are still in chains. So family, they didn't want to flee and leave the rest of their people in chains the way people can flee their countries today and leave their brothers and sisters in turmoil and poverty. We didn't want to do that. Okay. We thought that would be an act of betrayal. They believe their presence in the U.S. was the strongest argument for total abolition. Fleeing the country and seeking refuge in Liberia, they didn't see that as total abolition. So to combat the ACS, leaders began to drop the term African and adopt colored American to legally signal that they were not aliens to be shipped away, deported, but citizens to be recognized and to become non-deportable. So everything Tariq Nasheed said about that was correct. So there were about 350,000 to 500,000 free Blacks. So that this was only happening to free Blacks. You can't, the enslaved were not on the list for deportation, just free Blacks. So out of 350,000 to 500,000 free Blacks, only about 13,000 to 15,000 people immigrated to Liberia through the ACS, a tiny fraction of the population. So they were unsuccessful. White supremacists trying to, they say, repatriate us to Africa. They're very unsuccessful. And 100 years later, through Garvey and his UNIA and BS line, also was unsuccessful in so-called repatriating us to Liberia. All right. Subsequently, the ACS officially lost its influence after the 14th Amendment in 1868, which legally anchored the lineage as American citizens, making the argument for colonization a dead letter. All right. Now, the people who got swindled to believe that Africa was going to be a better life, okay, they'll have bushmeat buffets and things like that, told a different story when they got there. So there were letters from Liberia sent back to the United States throughout the 1800s, and they revealed a deeply bittersweet reality. While the ACS promoted the colony as a promised land, exactly the words of Marcus Garvey promoting his back to Liberia or back to Africa repatriation garbage talk. Same thing, promoting Africa as the promised land, as heaven. Well, back in the 1800s, after the ACS was promoting it like that, the pioneers who actually went often describe a brutal struggle for survival and a lingering, anchored connection to their American home. All right. The letters generally fell into two categories: those expressing a new sense of dignity. Huh? So supposedly some were expressing a new sense of dignity in their newfound home.
Stop the cap.
All right. And those expressing a feeling of abandonment. Some settlers wrote with pride about finally being treated as men and women rather than Negroes. Okay. One settler, Abraham Camp, wrote that they would rather be colonized in some place where they can be a people than stay in the U.S. and be ignored. Well, that was bad timing because citizenship right away through the Civil War. But look at the dark side, the real deal. A recurring theme was the seasoning process, a period where many new arrivals died from malaria and other tropical diseases to which they had no immunity. One settler wrote, "Many of our brothers are gone to their long home. Tell our friends to come prepared for sickness." Family, that was a quote. They were saying anybody who's planning on relocating to Liberia, falling for this finesse, be prepared for long suffering through sickness. All right. So interestingly, the pioneers did not try to become African in the sense of merging with the indigenous tribes. Instead, they built an Americo-Liberian identity. Uh-oh. They didn't try to be African in Africa. They kept their Americanness to a degree. They built houses in the style of the American South and wore American fashions. They modeled their government, flag, and laws directly after the United States, proving that their mental context remained deeply tied to their American experience. All right. So they brought the American to Africa, the Americanness to Africa. Because they saw themselves as civilized Americans, they often clashed with the indigenous African tribes who already lived on the land, sometimes treating them with the same disdain they had experienced from whites in the U.S. All right. So while the ACS was trying to move people out, the 1853 Rochester Convention was building a structure to keep people in. The National Council they established was intended to be the permanent headquarters for the American Negro lineage. So after I break this down, I'm going to play Tariq Nasheed going in on this more today. Like he dropped the premiere today. I'm going to play that. Right. So now with this in-depth research, you'll see it all lines up. All right. So the council, they plan to collect a small fee from every person to fund their legal defense in schools, effectively creating an autonomous economic engine. Okay. So the manual labor goal, right? They believe that if they master the mechanic arts, they would hold the financial power needed to force the U.S. to grant them full citizenship. So this is leading up to the Civil War, abolishment of slavery, and 1868 14th Amendment citizenship. Okay. So the council explicitly served those who identify as native born. Okay. Native born was the language. So when Dr. Carl Anderson said Native Black Americans, native was being used to describe foundational Black Americans apart from anybody who would immigrate here from another country that can pass as one of us or even cosplay. Native born. White folks also use the name nativist to separate them from recent immigrants of Europe. Okay. So the council explicitly served those who identify as native born, those whose ancestors uh, were here, from the beginning. So anyway, the failure of the ACS to relocate more than 15,000 people was proof that Black Americans were about lineage business. Okay. I got a cool song called It's All About the Lineage, baby. Okay, so they were standing on lineage business. All right. So, and they made their choice to stay here and not fall for the finesse. So by the time the 14th Amendment passed in 1868, the letters from Liberia became a distant memory for most, as the group focused on securing the wealth and land that they had already developed on American soil. So those letters like cap and acting like, hey man, it's great over here. Yeah, it's great, it's great. And man, when we got citizenship, we're like, all right, whatever. All right, okay, miss me with that. Stop the cap type stuff. All right, hold on. 1 second. Yeah, so it's gonna be dope information. So when I play Tariq going in on this again, it'll line up and it'll give you guys better clarity and better information to debunk these Pan-Africans, these Daffa ducks, who's gonna come behind and say, hey man, we was calling ourselves African way back in the day. No, Jesse Jackson is your leader. He brought that here. Okay, we were not calling ourselves African, nothing, not for a long period of time, and not a lot of us, small, tiny percent, and that went to the wayside. 1 second. Yeah, so don't let them trick you out of your spot. Give me a second. Shit. Is Here we go. Yeah, so it'll make more sense when Nasheed goes back into this. So I'm just giving y'all the in-depth information on ACS and our, how we seen that at that time. Okay, hold on. Okay, so now keep in mind, the Homestead Act was on the heels of the Civil War, right? And that was something Dr. King talks about oftenly, right? When he was alive. The Homestead Act of 1862 is one of the most significant examples of government-sponsored wealth creation in history, and it serves as a primary case study for the wealth gap between FBA's Black Americans and others. So while the government gave away roughly 270 million acres of land, 10% of the U.S., all the land, though, that was 10% of the U.S. land in total. It almost exclusively excluded the people, Black Americans, who had already spent generations clearing it. Remember, I told you, I get back to the phrase clearing the land. So when we say we're foundational and people want to know what does that mean and what do you mean other folks were no, you were not. You were late because you guys, they didn't clear the land. All right. So in the 18th and 19th centuries, clearing the land was not just a chore. It was about brutal multi-generational engineering feat that transformed a wilderness into a global economic superpower. Now, these Pan-Africans want to talk, these Daffa ducks, Pan-Africans want to talk about books. Well, I got a book, family. It's called Parchman Farming. That's part of the title. I read this with my own eyes about Black folks, walking through swamps, clearing the land. Bushes look like Amazons, knocking them all down so it should be nothing but land to build a foundation on. right? I got a physical book. These guys want to talk about books. No, I've read this physical book that I still got possession of. Still, to this day. Okay, anyway, let's talk about the deforestation that we did. Enslaved and free blacks, laborers were forced to fell millions of acres of old growth forest to create farmable land. We did that. It's called building the foundation. They manually dug massive trench systems to drain swamps, particularly in the South, turning useless wetlands into the most fertile cotton and rice fields on earth. Beyond the soil, they built the roads, bridges, and levees required to transport goods to market, literally laying the physical foundation for American financial power. That's why when they come over here, it goes left. Wherever they were before, where they thought they had some success debating FBAs, that is short lived over there on this channel. We dot all I's, cross all T's. But beyond the soil, our ancestors built the roads, bridges, right? All that type of stuff. So at 1853, Rochester Convention, Frederick Douglass, Umar's fake distant cousin, Frederick Douglass argued that this labor gave Black Americans a proprietary title to the country. He insisted that clearing the forests was an investment that the nation was legally obligated to repay. So, family, when you hear me say clearing the land going forward, this is documentation that I'm the first to use this phrase in our spaces. And people can borrow it because they're family. They can borrow it. But just know it came here first because I most times bring stuff to the forefront first. And so it's okay. Just flowers. Okay, so clearing the land. We did that. Frederick Douglass acknowledged that. So now watch this. We cleared the land. We cleared the land. So family, when Dr. King spoke of the 1862 Homestead Act and he gave away 270 million acres of land to white people so they could have 160 acres of land per individual. When we only had a fourth of that, we were supposed to get 40. They had 160. We supposed to get 40 acres in a mill. They got 160 acres in a mill. But family, if you're catching the drift, the land that was offered to them is the land we cleared. These are some hateful devils. Look, signed by Abraham Lincoln in 1862. The act allowed any quote unquote citizen or intended citizen to claim 18, one more time. Signed by Abraham Lincoln in 1862, the act allowed any citizen or intended citizen to claim 160 acres of surveyed Greenland. Millions of European immigrants were invited to intended citizen status, meaning they were given land before they even officially became Americans. Because the Dred Scott decision had ruled that Black people were not citizens, okay, until 1868, the foundational group was legally barred from claiming the very land we have had cleared for 250 years, family. You think we just gonna let that ride? So by the time the 14th Amendment made Black Americans citizens in 1868, much of the best land had already been homesteaded by white families. And we supposed to just let that ride. So white immigrants post 1862 had access to 160 acres of free land, which was the initial capital that they came here for. That free land was money that we cultivated, that we cleared. We were denied access to land. We had zero capital as a result. You had the land, you had money, no land, no money. Okay. So land, when concerning white immigrants who came post 1862, land could be sold, leveraged for loans, or passed down, generational wealth. But for us, labor was extracted and the value went to the enslaver or the state. Got it? So now look at the path to citizenship for immigrants post 1862. Land ownership accelerated their assimilation, family. Owning land helped them assimilate faster and better. Our citizenship was fought for after the wealth was distributed. So after the land and wealth was gone, now we fought. They said, "Hey, here you go. Here's citizenship." But ain't no land coming with that. You feel me? So based on all of that, that land, that wealth from way 1862, family, listen, that 1862 wealth became the basis of the American middle class today, coupled with the HOLC. But these tethers that want to be conservatives and these Charlie Kirk types will act like that had no bearing on today. I mean, it's like just impossible to talk to. That's called disdain. They got disdain for us. They don't want to take our information, our history seriously. And while that free land became the basis of the middle class then and today, that lack of land for us became the basis of the modern wealth gap that we speak about. Right? So while most were suspicious about going to Liberia, accepting the premises hand, right? Most of us were suspicious. A small minority of free blacks supported immigration to Liberia. And their reasons were usually pragmatic rather than ideological. Why? What do I mean? Many felt that no matter how much they achieved in America, white supremacy was an immovable object in the U.S. Liberia offered a chance for total self-governance. So now Umar and other Dr. Ruxpin, other disingenuous D.A.F.A. DUX Pan-Africans will try to say that these were the first Pan-Africans. Family, nothing about their decision going to Liberia had anything to do with Pan-Africanism. These guys are looking back and rewriting history, no different than the LGBTQIA plus community, how they look back and start calling Foundation Black women feminists and all this other stuff. Same thing. But then they'll get mad at us looking back and saying, "Hey, that's a Foundation Black American, Frederick Douglass." Oh, no, 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 no. It's like, yo, you just did it, but you did it with malicious intent. We did it because that's what it is. Right? So anyway, many felt that no matter how much they achieved in America, white supremacy was an immovable object in the U.S., and Liberia offered a chance for total self-governance, right? Some as a divine mission, Christianity and Western education to the African continent. How did that work? How did that work out? The ACS promised land and leadership roles that were legally denied to them in the USA. For those living in the South under constant threat of being kidnapped into slavery, Liberia represented a physical escape from a police state. So free blacks who got their freedom legally, they would be terrorized with racist devils about going back into slavery, even though they accessed their freedom status legally and the right way. Anyway, when Tariq Nasheed spoke about thousands of people in Philadelphia who said, "Yo, stop the African talk, man. We ain't with that." That's true. Because he's talking about 1817, right? So this is a year after the birth of the ACS. The ACS was founded in 1816. The very next year, family, your ancestors gave significant pushback, January 1817, right? Literally just weeks after the ACS was formed. over 3,000 free blacks gathered at Mother Bethel AME Church. AME, African Methodist Episcopal, at Richard Allen Church. Yeah, they were not trying to be African. They were de-African themselves. Like, nah. So at that church, the Mother Bethel AME Church in Philadelphia, the largest meeting of black people in American history up to that point. So family, we got together more than ever at that time to say no Africa. They overwhelmingly rejected the ACS, calling it cruel and predatory, planned to exile them from their birthright right here in America. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me gather myself. Get some things straight. Give me 1 second. That song in my head. Nobody pray. You know what's funny? My son, I caught him trying to sing, 4 years old, trying to sing Tariq Radio, like and subscribe, but he don't know the words, so he just trying to hum the tune. He like, honey, radio, like and subscribe. I'm like, what'd you say? So he had sung again. I said, oh, he really say trying to sing this song. All right. Oh my God. All right. I'm letting these nosy folks walk on by. Just walk on by. Walk on by. Okay, get out of my way. All right. As I was saying, they argued that their ancestors' blood, sweat, and tears, these are quotes, had watered the American soil, and they refused to abandon their enslaved brothers and sisters for a colony in the land they had never seen. Family, we were never off that Africa stuff. That is a Marcus Garvey lie. And that's why Liberia is spelled L, the first three letters are capitalized, and then the Beria is lowercase. So it's spelled capital L, capital I, capital E, and then Beria. Because that lie that we were trying to repatriate and we wanted to be in touch with Africa and African roots, that's a lie. And that's why it's called Liberia. That is the land for the liars. Okay? You a liar? You want to revise history? Then take yourself to Liberia. That's a perfect homeland for you. Perfect homeland for you. Take yourself to Liberia. All right, give me 1 second. Oh, I mean do that. All right, whatever. Okay. So I know the reading is the boring part, but we got to get it out the way. It adds context, everything. It makes you understand what's going on. All right, because without that, when we talk about things like you don't know what's going on, like you just nod in your head like you in church. When Tariq or myself speak on things that's historically accurate, how are you following along? You just pretending you are. So that's why somebody got to take the time out to go over this information, the boring part. But it's necessary because it's documented now in the video. You can refer to the video and cook somebody. But yeah, the boring part is necessary, and I'll take the sacrifice for the team. I'll take one for the team. So many early institutions were named African, like Richard Allen's AME Church, right, to signify ethnic pride, he says. However, the ACS used that pride against the community, like Tariq Nasheed said. ACS members argued that if black people called themselves African, they were admitting they weren't American and therefore had no legal right to stay. So don't let these clowns, these Daffa ducks, tell you you're African. That's why they're so upset. We're saying, "Nah, we ain't African." They're like, "Yes, you are. We trying to get you deported out of here. Send you to Burkina Faso. Help protect Ibrahim Traoré or some shit." But yeah, so the family, now you see the concerted effort to call yourself African so they can justify deporting you right along with some of these illegals. Right? So that led to the 1830s. Now we went from 1817, 3,000 gathered together in Philadelphia. Now it's the 1830s. And this type of information, I'm going to cook on this. Watch. So that led to the 1830s National Negro Convention movement, where leaders urged the community to drop the word African and adopt colored American or oppressed Americans to secure their legal anchor in the U.S. soil. So family, we foundational Black Americans, those who stayed to get this message, you guys just got a gem, a golden nugget. What we're doing right now, delineating, self-identifying for clarity, was already done in the 1830s. So when they come up on here and they have a problem with us renaming and say, "Nah, that's new. Ain't nobody going with that," you can say, "Hey, brother, this is what we always did. Have you ever heard of the National Negro Convention movement?" Now, of course, they're going to deflect. What's that? No. Brother, just answer the question. Have you heard of the National Negro Convention movement? If not, no problem. It's not a gotcha. I will explain what happened. But these were blacks who were delineating and self-identifying away from anything remotely close to African. So renaming for clarity isn't something new. It is not something foreign. This is part of our culture. When we're being diluted, when we're given a name as a trick bag to cause us harm, our culture is to catch that in real time and make adjustments. Say, "Hey, that term might not be cool right now. Let's drop that and let's go ahead and do this." We're not doing anything different, family, from our ancestors. We're doing exactly what they did with the same word. It's crazy. It's crazy. Ain't that crazy? The same word. The same word, family. That's 1830. We're almost 200 years later doing the same SHIT, arguing for the same SHIT. Almost 200 years later, family, people are still trying to give us the word African. They're still trying to Africanize us so that we can be seen as aliens or as immigrants, like Jesse Jackson admitted. Italian Americans, Jewish Americans, Mexican Americans. He said that. He said he was giving us African American to get a hyphenated terminology like other immigrants, Italian immigrants, Italian Americans, Mexican immigrants, Mexican Americans, and Jewish immigrants, Jewish Americans. Jesse Jackson said that. And you see, we were fighting against that way in the 1830s. No, we're not taking on any terminology that can be mistaken as though we're not official Native Americans. Nobody's going to strip us from our birthright, right? So yeah, so I'm going to mention the 1830 National Negro Convention movement. And I'm going to talk about this often, family, so we all can learn and be familiar with this, right? Because the best way to learn is through repetition. Okay. So by choosing colored American, they were signaling to the government, we are not Africans temporarily here in America. We are the Americans who built this place, and we're going to stay for our justice, for what's owed to us, for our stake in this country and the debt that's owed to us. All right. I'm almost done. I'm going to get back on Tariq because he's going to go in debt. But now you got the full in-depth research to this. And I believe you're going to hear Tariq Nasheed talking about some of this stuff because it seems like Big Brother being here peeking in on the info, right? Okay. So anyway, speaking of Frederick Douglass, Umar, at the Rochester Convention in 1853, Frederick Douglass and others didn't just talk. They established a national council. Oh, kind of like what we're doing today as individuals, and you can even throw in the ADOS advocacy um, thing, right? Organization. Frederick Douglass came with the National Council. So it was designed to act as a black government to manage the economic and social affairs of our lineage of his peoples, right? The council's main goal was to establish a manual labor school to ensure that they had the mechanic arts and trades, which they view as the only path to real capital and independence. Okay, so that council family was for the protection of the native born, that's their words, black population, and as they were the ones whose labor had been stolen to build the nation's 19th century financial power. Okay, you got that? So when we talk about the early 1700s, the early 1800s, free blacks frequently used the word African. Free blacks frequently, you know what that word means, right? So free blacks frequently used the African word to describe their institutions, their institutions, family, their entities, the African Society, the African Lodge. Okay, so this was a way to claim a heritage of ancient civilization and dignity into the face of American Negro labels, right? Once the ACS started trying to send them back, right? That's in quotations. Many black leaders stopped calling themselves African in public. They shifted to terms like colored American or even Anglo blacks to emphasize their right to stay in the U.S., right? So before the 14th Amendment, 1868, blacks were legally non-citizens, right? And they were in the country, but not of the country, as ruled in Dred Scott. So because they were not citizens, the term African American or anything African was virtually non-existent. Okay. So no, nobody called themselves African American at all. You got a lie coming from retarded Reggie saying we call ourselves African American. So I think that's about it. I think anything else is overkill. You just make sure it. So everything else is overkill. I got more reading, but it just beating a dead horse. I think the most what I had to say already landed. Okay, so now that we know what we know, here's Tariq Nasheed follow-up of the same topic. So 3 different occasions and like within 2 weeks, probably a week, but I'm gonna say 2 weeks, 3 different occasions, 3 different videos within like 2 weeks. Tariq Nasheed addressed this 3 times, right? So that means that he's trying to hone it in on you, like the way I tried to almost a year ago. Check it out.
This is why, family, they and the people who really have an issue with the term foundational Black American, a lot of the Democrats, because see, foundational, man, that's putting a monkey wrench in their game. I want y'all to understand this is putting a monkey wrench in the immigration game. Can we get deep on this broadcast? Are y'all ready to get deep? Let's get deep for a minute. Let's bring this thing full circle. Can we have a deep moment and just really chop this thing up? Why this delineation movement is really whooping ass and people are kicking and screaming. Can we go there? Can we go deep for a minute, family? Let's go deep for a minute and really bring this thing home so we can really get a full understanding from all angles why people are acting a fool over us delineating. Because, The foundational Black American, that's the hottest topic on social media. Everybody's discussing it. It's just a hot topic right now. And it has a lot of people kicking and screaming. Family, all we did, ladies and gentlemen, was put the word foundational in front of Black American. And this has people flipping out. People around the world. You got Kevin's all up in England and Amsterdam crying. They call us crying about the foundational. What is this shit? Why does this thing have people toe up? Let me tell you something. See, why putting foundational in front of Black American? Why does that make it so powerful, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, people all in Australia calling up tripping. Why does foundational have so much power? See, foundational, ladies and gentlemen, it turns Black Americans. See, the NAACP are doing, they're doing a race designation. Just Black people. If you got melanin and you look Black, oh, you're under threat. Oh, you're under threat. No. See, foundational, ladies and gentlemen, it turns Black American into a lineage-based peoplehood claim, not just a vibes-based identity. See, that's different. See, we're saying we're not just a color category. We are a distinct, rooted population with a very specific historical formation in the United States. And that messes everybody up because that disrupts all the people who benefit from keeping Black as a broad, interchangeable label. See, that's what they need. They need Black to just be interchangeable and wide open, and we cut that off. And foundational, it asserts a first order status in the American story. See, foundational frames us Black Americans as the core architects of the country's development. The country's labor, culture, politics, the institutional change. We're not just a minority add-on to somebody else's narrative. See, and that's a power move because it relocates the center of gravity. So we were not included later. We're not comparable to immigrants, ladies and gentlemen. We were here at the very beginning and we were pivotal to the beginning of this thing. You see? And then it forces people to say, okay, which group are you talking about? Because now people can't just use some melanated immigrant to throw us under the bus because that's getting checked now. So anytime they use something of some melanated person doing something janky and they're like, oh God, look at the Black people. We're quick to point out, hey, wait a minute, that person ain't, no, that person ain't us. That's a melanated immigrant. That ain't us. So yeah, that don't affect us. You're not going to put that on us. So we stop the trash dumping. No. People have been so trash on us. We can cut that out. That's done. All that trash dumping shit is done. So now whenever they do something janky, they are now held responsible for it as immigrants. Oh, they don't like that. Because they've been skating by for a long time, or we gave them cover for a long time. They would separate all of their wins, but all of their losses, we had to absorb them ourselves. I've always said this. Anytime they win, I'm Nigerian, I'm Ugandan, I'm Jamaican. If you go rob a bank, oh, damn, the Black community, or, oh, the Black people. Now we're saying, oh, no. That dude who robbed that bank, look at that for. Look at his last name. We didn't found where his family is from. He ain't us. It was the game right there. That has changed the game. You see, and us putting foundational in front of that Black American, see, that makes credit and ownership harder to steal. You see, foundational, that's a cultural watermark. It points to an origin, on authorship. So when people try to remix or rebrand or launder our creations, basically a generic African creation or global label, foundational, that keeps the origin argument alive and harder to co-opt. That's why every time we do something, when we sat up here and let people make us generic Africans, everything we do, they would sit up here and try to attribute it to some ancient damn African tribe. So we do R&B. Well, 3,000 years ago, there was a flute and somebody played the flute in the Akan tribe, and that was the first R&B song 3,000 years ago. So we got R&B from the motherland, that type shit, And we're saying, no, we created well, gumbo came from and the New Orleans people will call up and say, no, baby. No, we didn't, baby. No, we didn't, baby. And so we're foundational, baby. So yeah, we're checking all of that. We're checking that. And also, when we use the term foundation, gentlemen, the emotional posture from asking to naming. See, there's a psychological shift when a group names itself with authority. See, that's not a plea for recognition. That is, we're telling you who the fuck we are. That's why the energy is different. That's why, y'all so hostile. Because it's a declaration. We're not asking for permission. We've been told you who we are. It caught on, and that's what it is now. They're not used to that. Because they're used to us begging and waiting on somebody to define us. And we sat here and defined ourselves. It caught on, and now they're catching up to it. That's a power move. They're not used to us making power moves like that, ladies and gentlemen. And when we use foundational, family, that flips the default frame of integration into a frame of inheritance. See, instead of us running around talking, no, what we're saying is we're foundational. We have a stake in America. We are the true Americans. See, inheritance language is powerful because it already implies rights, legitimacy, priority. And that threatens other groups because they need us to be on this bottom hierarchy nonsense, and we're just not on that no more. You see? And the thing about us, man, what makes us unique, what makes the foundational part unique about us, ladies and gentlemen, is the cultural continuity of foundational Black American lineage. That's the thing that really makes it powerful. See, foundational, ladies and gentlemen, it means present at the origin and continuous throughout time. You understand? See, the other groups can't say that. We are the only ethnic group, ladies and gentlemen, that has remained the same ethnic group without being amalgamated or mixed in with nothing else since the very beginning. Did y'all hear what I just said? Let me say it one more time, ladies and gentlemen. We are the only ethnic group that has been the same without really intermixing and amalgamating into other groups constantly from the very beginning. What does that mean, ladies and gentlemen? See, we were already an ethnic group before the United States fully defined itself. We were Negroes, all right? We were Negroes before the word African was used over here. Like I said the other day, the word African, to describe people here, they didn't start using that till the Revolutionary War, the 1770s. That's the first time people over here started to identify as African. And it was really in the North, and that was for political reasons. I broke that down the other day. If you look at any records around the American Revolution, 1776, 1780, 1790, you see a lot of status talk, a lot of people using African or Moor. You had that Sundry Free Moors Act where you had some people declaring their Moorish status and all that stuff because this was a newly formed country. So people wanted to make sure they had the right status. But Negro, black, that's always been a constant since before the beginning of the United States on this land. You understand? So we were already a locked in ethnic group. Do you understand? And white people can't even claim that because a lot of European descendant groups, many of them had to change classifications. You understand what I'm saying? A lot of Europeans who came here early on, some of them weren't even considered white. The Irish weren't considered white. When the Italians came a little later, they weren't considered white. The Greeks were not considered white. You understand? They weren't considered white. So they had to adapt and blend into whiteness a little later. So they were not a distinct people early on. They were redefined and remixed. You understand? So they benefited from reclassification upward later on. We had a stable and imposed classification, and it was a continuous lineage marked by exclusion. So there was no path into reclassification or absorption. So that consistency matters. You understand? See, we weren't able to shift legal definitions, and we still maintain an identity despite the exclusion. And again, even the Native American tribes can't say that because many of the Native American tribes, what happened? Many of them were either destroyed, they were fragmented, or they were merged into something else. They were either merged into Negro, they were reclassified as Negro, or they were blended into white society. That's why, and we see the dolls rolls when they had the Indian census. The white supremacists started paying $5 to get on the damn census, so they started whitening up some of those Native American tribes. That's why when you look at those tribes now, some of the tribe chiefs, they look like Elizabeth Warren and Justin Timberlake. Those aren't the same people from 400 years ago. Look at those tribal leaders now. You go to these websites to see the Cherokee and all these tribes. They lily damn white. Those aren't the same people from 400 years ago at all. Let's be real. But we're the same people. We are the same exact people from 500 years ago. We are the exact same. You understand that? Same culture, same customs, same spirit, same thing. We are the same. We have a cultural continuity that's unmatched. You understand? And our presence was really uninterrupted across every U.S. era. The colonial period, we were the same. The revolutionary period, we were the same. Antebellum slavery, we were the same. Civil War, the same. Reconstruction, the same. Jim Crow, the same. Civil rights, the same. At every single stage, we were present, identifiable, functioning as the same population base. There was no mass exit, no mass absorption into some other group. We didn't disappear into some other category. So that's what foundational means, man. Structural permanence. Yeah? And that continuity, ladies and gentlemen, that creates a unique moral, political, and historic claim. When we say we're foundational, we didn't arrive at a later date. We didn't disappear. We didn't transform into something else. We weren't fleeing all these different places. We didn't get absorbed upward. We endured as ourselves. You understand? This is very, very important to understand our history. Because, see, it was like a gift and a curse. See, the dominant white society, in order to build a racial caste system, they needed an anchored bottom caste. See, the U.S. needed a stable bottom caste to make race enforceable. So blackness became that anchor. Are y'all following where I'm going? Y'all follow me? See, for a racial hierarchy to work long term, you need a consistent reference point, a group whose status is made durable across generations. So in U.S. slavery and then the Jim Crow, there was a system where blackness was treated as a hereditary status. It wasn't just a temporary condition like some of these immigrants. So that stability made it possible to build a whole social order where up and down had a permanent meaning. You know what I'm saying? So we were basically the anchor where everybody based their identity off of how close or how much proximity do you have to the blacks. Yeah. And they were real rigid with it. They had that one drop rule. They made blackness the default absorber. So that stabilized that caste system. So that one drop rule, it was significant because it prevented boundary erosion. So people of mixed ancestry, you know, they could be recognized as white. If they could be recognized as white, the caste system, that would blur over time. So that one drop rule solved that by saying you got any black in you, you black. Yeah. So they tried to make a foundational underclass. And many of these European groups or European adjacent groups, they became white by proving they were not black. See, black has been a constant. White has been something that has changed over and over and over again. You understand? Whiteness is still changing. Yeah, whiteness has been flipped, remixed, changed. Yeah, some people who were white now were not white in the 1800s. Some people who were white in the 30s weren't white. Now they've changed whiteness over and over and over again. Now they've allowed Arabs to be classified as white. You know what I'm saying? So whiteness is something that's fluid. It changes. See, blackness doesn't. Black meant one thing. Them, over there, us. It just meant one thing. You see? Now, that was a gift and a curse. That was kind of a gift at the end of the day because, see, that forced containment, see, that's what Jim Crow and all these laws, you know, these oppressive laws kept us in certain boundaries. We couldn't go here. We couldn't go there. We couldn't move up. We couldn't move down. We were forced in a containment system. And what happened is that forced proximity created an unbroken cultural feedback loop. You understand? So what happened was there was constant internal cultural exchange. There were shared reference points across different regions. We all clicked in with each other across the country because we all treated the same. So we all became one big ass family to a certain degree. We didn't have all that tribal shit that was going on in Africa. That's why you got your cousins in the north, cousins in the west, and y'all, we all on the same vibe. You know, that was strengthening us internally. You see? So instead of culture being fragmented across social lines, it looped back into itself, strengthening cohesiveness. So a lot of groups don't have that strong cultural cohesiveness that foundational Black Americans have. And segregation, unintentionally, it protected cultural integrity. Because, see, we were violently prevented from assimilating into the dominant society, so our cultural forms weren't diluted. Our traditions were not absorbed and neutralized early. Our identity wasn't fragmented into competing class-based subcultures like the dominant white society. You see, so that segregation, it was somewhat like a pressure cooker. It was cruel and unjust, but it produced a highly concentrated cultural output that it was extremely recognizable. It was Black American. Our culture is so recognizable and so powerful. That's why it's globally powerful, because it's so consistent and it's so authentic and it's not diluted. That's why everything culturally, we are the barometer in which people want to judge. So if there's a white person who could dance, well, did you learn from a Black person? See, that was the test. Did a Black person teach you? That made the white person authentic. When they started doing country music, they would brag about the black people they got it from. That made the whitey people. You understand? When you start doing rock and roll, when they were in proximity with us, acting like us, that made them more authentic. Even to this day, we are the cultural barometer to which everybody judges things because we are the most authentic. Because our culture is not diluted unless we start inviting people to the picnic and all that stuff. It gets diluted a little bit later when we start inviting people into the damn picnic. You see? Important. So that cultural continuity, we remain a coherent culture that's easily identifiable. People across the world recognize our speech patterns, our music structures, the whole shebang. And it raised cultural standards and it created cultural authority because a lot of other people lack the continuity that we have. See? Now, this is why, ladies and gentlemen, we're circling back on what's happening now. The dominant society, they realize that that containment made us unintentionally powerful. They realize they've done that. And now what they're trying to do is actively dilute it, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying to dilute our cultural power and cohesiveness. They're like, wait a minute, we done sat up here and Jim Crowed these people and made them look inward to their culture. Now their culture is so strong. We got to figure out a way to kind of dilute them a little bit. We don't want to amalgamate them into the dominant white society. So when we do immigration, immigration, yeah. So now let's open up the door and let's have some of these foreigners mix in with them. And these foreigners don't have the same cohesiveness as they do, but they're minorities, and we got to let them know that this minority coalition is the new thing. We got to have this big coalition. We're all in this. We got to get these other people who are not of their lineage to play Harriet. Yeah, if we get some of the country, let's get a Nigerian to sit records and give him a, and then when he wins an award, gets on stage and say, hey, shout out to all the immigrants. Yeah. They know, but we wouldn't do
at all. Okay, so that part, I'm gonna put the whole thing. I want to focus on really the part when he spoke on Black Americans using the term African to describe ourselves. That's ahistorical. That is something that's made up by tethers and Pan-Africans who are collectively making up the cult organization called D.A.F.A. and D.A.F.A. DUX, to be more precise. That is not something that we did in the 1800s or early 1900s. We didn't call ourselves African. We went away from that. We knew what comes, but we knew what came along with that. Okay, so that's a lie, and they're revising history when they talk about somebody. Oh, that's a Pan-Africanist. That's just them saying that he is or she is. No, they didn't call themselves that at all. Since we want to go with what people call themselves, well, they didn't call themselves Pan-Africans, right? If you're trying to say, oh, Frederick Douglass, he ain't FBA, he ain't call himself that, well, stop calling people Pan-Africans. They damn sure ain't say that. But one thing Frederick Douglass was, he was an American, a Black American citizen, right? Because he got his citizenship the right way. He didn't sneak over in the country. He didn't have the Dems, the libtards protecting him from ICE. He got his citizenship the right way. So thank you for the super chat, First class citizen, scam Africanism is our antithesis. Yeah, so I appreciate the love from everybody. I'm gonna end this one now because I want to go live again and go over the Africans who were calling in to Tariq Nasheed Radio, trying to Africanize him and try to Africanize the lineage and his response, his rebuttals, and with my reaction, of course. So don't want to hold y'all up too late. I know there's a lot of things going on, but check this out. This is the Nobody Prayed For Us song. It goes along with the theme. Nobody prayed for us. We built the foundation. So family, so now you guys know the term cleared the land. When they say, hey man, how are you foundational? Well, we're the only people who cleared the land. Ain't no 1862 Homestead Act. Ain't no 270 million acres to give to white immigrants coming over here without us clearing the land. You dig? So I'm telling you, family, we got them all day. You ain't foundational. All right, well, who cleared the land? What that mean? Yeah, exactly. Get your goofy ass up.
They brought us to this country as a labor force. We built a foundation and they hate us for it. They hate us for it. We built a foundation and they ain't pay us for it. They ain't pay us for it, but they gon' pay for it. Already prayed for it. Non-believers didn't pray for us. Non-believers didn't pray for us. We're black and we built a foundation. Stone by stone, generation to generation. Vultures said we had no culture. Them vultures got a Jay-Z poster. Them vultures got a lacy culture. Vultures eat what they didn't kill. Vultures sleep what they didn't build. They brought us to this country as a labor force. We built the foundation and they hate us for it. We built the foundation and they ain't pay us for it. They ain't pay for it, but they gon' pay for it. Already prayed for it. Nobody prayed for it. Nobody doesn't pray for us. Nobody doesn't pray for us. We're black and we built a foundation. Stone by stone, generation to generation. Vultures said we had no culture. And vultures got a Jay-Z poster. Them vultures got a lacy poster.